Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 15, Did I Do Something Wrong? Chapter 15, Did I Do Something Wrong? Whether it was his past life or this one, Wang Shenqiu always made things hard for his son. In his past life, Wang Teng was Lin Chuhan's table buddy for 1 year. The prettiest young lady in school was right in front of him, yet he couldn't touch her. It felt highly frustrating. After they graduated from senior high, Lin Chuhan went to the capital Xia and studied at the first capital university. After that, he heard that she went overseas to further her studies and came back 3 years later. At that time, she displayed exceptional business talent and built a huge franchise all over the country within a few years. Her company was looking to go international. She became a powerful boss in the business world in that era and became an amazing person. He recalled her life and looked back at his. He felt like a salted fish lying in front of a whale, a salted fish that laid in front of her for an entire year. Wang Teng lowered his gaze and looked at Lin Chuhan's lean legs. He had the urge to go forward and hug them tightly. These beautiful legs felt as though they were encased in gold. Honestly speaking, this young lady's figure was perfect. Lin Chuhan was reciting her textbook when she suddenly felt an intense gaze landing on her legs. She frowned uncontrollably. Humph. A snort woke Wang Teng up from his daze. Wang Teng looked at Lin Chuhan's cold face and touched his nose. He laughed softly and retracted his gaze. Why is he still laughing? This fellow is so irritating, Lin Chuhan muttered softly to herself. Wang Teng shook his head. He had experienced 2 lifetimes, but he was still so easily distracted. That was embarrassing. He took out his phone and planned to look up information regarding the university entrance exam. What Wang Shenqiu said in the morning had made him see the university entrance exam in a new light. Wang Teng always thought that after he became a martial warrior, his status would be different. He wouldn't need to participate in the university entrance exam. He didn't know that there were so many things he had to do and understand even after he became a martial warrior. Fortunately, Wang Shenqiu had reminded him in time. If not, he might have missed the university entrance exam this year. He searched casually, and a whole bunch of information on the university entrance exam jumped out. It had to be said this world and the world in his past life had some minor differences. If you didn't look at it carefully, you wouldn't be able to find them. For instance, this planet wasn't named Earth. It was called the Earth Star instead. For instance, their country was called Huaxia, an ancient name for China, and the capital was called Capital University. The first capital university was a university situated in the capital. Donghai was similar to Shanghai. Donghai University and Capital Xia University were both top universities in the country. The time of the university entrance exam had changed too, from June to the 5th of July. That was because this was the day martial arts started gaining popularity in public. Today, the martial arts examination was the most crucial part of the university entrance exam. So, the test was held on this special day with a special meaning. Wang Teng did more research on the registration for the martial arts course. The martial arts examination was very different from the routine examination. Martial arts wasn't just about testing your language, mathematics, English, and science. It included the human anatomy, the history of martial arts, spirit herb studies, mineralogy, and other various bits and pieces. The Ministry of Education had compiled all these bits of knowledge into a book called 5 Years of Martial Arts Exam, 3 years of mock papers. Anyone that wanted to take the martial arts course would get 1 copy of this book. Wang Teng looked at the name with a weird expression. He wondered if he should get his hands on one too. After thinking for a moment, he decided to give up. It was impossible for him to learn everything. He had to rely on picking up attributes. There were 5 advanced stage martial disciples in Donghai No. 1 High School. They would definitely take the martial arts examination, and they would have most likely studied the 5 years of martial arts exam, 3 years of mock papers. He could find time to visit them and pick up some attributes. This way, Wang Teng could collate more points for the proficiency of the 5 years of martial arts exam, 3 years of mock papers. If that wasn't enough, there were other students from other schools taking the martial arts course. He could look for them and collect some bubbles. Wang Teng came up with a good plan. This fellow came so early, but he's actually playing with his phone. When Lin Chuhan saw Wang Teng fiddling with his phone the entire morning, she frowned again. She said in a low voice, "Wang Teng, come out with me for a moment." After dropping her words, she stood up directly and walked out of the classroom. Wang Teng was still pondering over the martial arts examination, so he was at a loss when he heard Lin Chuhan. But as he looked at the other party's back as she walked out of the classroom, he got up and followed her. "Forget it, since you're pretty, I will give you some response." Wang Teng kept his phone and placed his hands in his pocket. He casually walked out of the class and saw Lin Chuhan waiting for him around a corner. "What's the matter, class monitor Lin?" Wang Teng looked at the beautiful face in front of him and asked. "Wang Teng, there's less than a month until the university entrance exam. Why are you still playing every day? Are you not planning to take the university entrance exam?" Lin Chuhan asked with a cold expression. "Even you know that there's only less than a month until the examination. What's the point of working hard now?" Wang Teng said in a joking manner. Wang Teng's nonchalant tone made Lin Chuhan unhappy. Her brows furrowed. In the end, she controlled her temper and said, "I have some notes. Although there's less than a month, if you work hard, you might be able to score some points in the entrance exam. Your family background is good. It shouldn't be difficult for you to get into a good university." "Class monitor Lin, why are you so concerned about me?" Wang Teng suddenly asked. "Don't think too highly of yourself," Lin Chuhan replied without any expressions. "What do you mean by I care about you? How can there be someone so shameless? Why are you worried about my university entrance exam then?" Wang Teng continued asking. "The head teacher let you sit beside me because he wants me to help you with your studies. It's alright if you didn't listen to me in the past. However, the university entrance exam is coming, so I'm reminding you sincerely one last time," Lin Chuhan explained. "Any explanation is a cover-up," Wang Teng teased her. Lin Chuhan was stunned by his shamelessness. She didn't know what to say for a moment. She continued in frustration, "I'm persuading you because we are table buddies. You can choose whether you want to listen to me or not. If you can't enter university, it has nothing to do with me." She turned around and wanted to go back to the classroom. However, she didn't see the broom that had fallen on the ground because of her brisk pace. She tripped over the broom and staggered. "Oh shit, there's nothing for me to hold onto." Lin Chuhan had a huge shock. But the next second, she felt someone hugging her body. Wang Teng had noticed the strange feeling in his hand too. He froze for a moment. "Hurry up and let go." Lin Chuhan wanted to cry. "Do you really want me to let go?" said Wang Teng. "Let go." Lin Chuhan said firmly. "Okay then," Wang Teng released his grip. He let go of his hand. "Ahh." Lin Chuhan fell with her face landing flat on the ground. "Class monitor, you were the one who asked me to let go," Wang Teng said honestly. Lin Chuhan raised one hand from the ground and pointed at Wang Teng. Her finger kept trembling. Are you alright?" Wang Teng bent down beside her and asked carefully. Lin Chuhan raised her head. Her hair was in a mess, and her exquisite nose, as well as her forehead, was entirely red. She looked so hopeless. "Wang Teng, you bastard." She got up from the ground and ran away without turning back. She felt so embarrassed. Wang Teng looked at Lin Chuhan's back view as she ran further and further away. His expression was a little awkward. Did he do something wrong? Chapter 16, Tricks. These are all tricks. Chapter 16, Tricks. These are all tricks. Wang Teng walked into the classroom. Memories of Lin Chuhan kept appearing in his mind uncontrollably. He remembered that at that time, she would always persuade him in hopes that he would suddenly get enlightened and study hard. Unfortunately, in his past life, he never turned back. He walked along the path of darkness right to the end. After that, the two of them parted and never met again. It was really regretful. This lady left her mark in his memory in the past. This lifetime, he didn't want to miss her. When Wang Teng went back, almost the entire class had arrived. As a result, more attribute bubbles had fallen to the ground. Wang Teng walked around the classroom under his classmates' puzzled gazes and picked up all the attribute bubbles. English *9. Language *12. Biology *15. What is this young Master Wang doing? Who knows? Maybe he's taking a stroll. Taking a stroll? Why do you care about what he's doing? He's a rich second generation. His thinking is not on the same level as us. His train of thoughts is really peculiar. The meddlesome students couldn't help but lower their voices and discuss among themselves. All the while, they had strange expressions on their faces. When Wang Teng turned around and looked at them, their voices disappeared. They all sat there seriously and pretended to be studying hard. Wang Teng pouted as he sat down on his seat. Lin Chuhan wasn't in her seat. No one knew where she went. She only walked into the classroom when the school bell signaling the start of the morning lesson rang. She had a cold expression and didn't glance at Wang Teng at all. She sat on her seat as though there was just a ball of air beside her. Wang Teng smiled bitterly. He didn't dare to provoke her again. Lin Chuhan's personality was distant and cold. When she wore a chilly expression, she gave off an aura that seemed to forbid anyone to get close to her. This young lady is really cold. During the morning lesson, Wang Teng flipped through his textbook aimlessly. He was bored to death. All the students were intensely revising the entire morning. Wang Teng had a fruitful morning too. He listened to the class and picked some attributes while at it. His knowledge of his subjects increased exponentially. If he was to take a test now, he could get around 60 points. This was extremely frightening. Mind you, his past results only had one digit, and that was if he was lucky and chose the correct answer for the multiple choice questions. Lin Chuhan didn't want to interact with Wang Teng. However, since they were table buddies, she could see what Wang Teng was doing. She couldn't help but feel surprised. Did this fellow's character change suddenly? Why is he reading the textbook? Have my words borne fruit? Or could it be that this bastard likes me? Lin Chuhan had never been in a relationship, but she had chatted about guys with her female friends before. Also, she secretly read some romance novels. In a novel, when a young man loved another young lady, he would take her words to heart and make changes for her. That was what all novels said. The guys always wanted to present a better self to the other party. When she thought about what happened just now, she felt something strange in her heart. But, this fellow was still so irritating. He actually let go of her. Would he have died if he had held onto her? He was really a dumb young man. As she thought about this, Lin Chuhan suddenly woke up in shock. She shook her head like a pellet drum, and her ears uncontrollably turned red. What kind of nonsense am I thinking about? There was a tremendous fight going on in Lin Chuhan's brain. All kinds of young girls' thoughts were jumbled up in her mind. Her whole face was so red that it felt as though she was in a steamer. Lin Chuhan's will might be stronger than her peers, but she was a young girl after all. She would naturally have this kind of thoughts about love. After some time, Lin Chuhan sighed quietly. It's all that fellow's fault. He's disturbing my peacefulness. Wang Teng noticed Lin Chuhan shaking her head frantically and then sighing for no reason. He felt confused. What is she doing? He couldn't help but open his mouth. Class monitor Lin, the lesson has ended. Go and take your lunch break. Why don't I treat you? This is my apology for what happened this morning. Lin Chuhan was flabbergasted. The next instant, she turned vigilant. Tricks. These are all tricks. This fellow has other intentions towards me. Wang Teng was dumbfounded. Why are you giving such a vigilant look? Other people might think that I'm a human trafficker abducting people. Lin Chuhan glared at Wang Teng and said coldly, I'm not going. She got up and took her bag after she finished speaking. Then, she ran out of the classroom as though something would happen if she stayed a moment longer with him. Strange. Wang Teng shook his head helplessly. Was he so scary? He actually managed to make a young lady evade him as though he was a poisonous scorpion. Brother Wang Teng, let's go and eat. Suji's voice came from outside the classroom at this moment. Wang Teng got up and walked out. Suji was a year 3 student too. But, he was in class 12. He wasn't in the same class as Wang Teng. As for Bai Wei and Yu Hao, they were studying in year 2 in Donghai No. 1 high school. They were 1 year younger than the two of them. Usually, they wouldn't go home for lunch. Instead, they would finish their meals in the school cafeteria, or sometimes, they would go to a restaurant outside the school to eat. When Wang Teng and Suji arrived at the cafeteria, it was already crowded. The noise could almost turn the roof upside down. At this moment, Suji's WeChat notification rang. He took out his phone and looked at it. Then, he said, let's go to the second floor. Bai Wei and the rest are waiting for us there. The second floor was more spacious than the first. When they reached the second floor, the air conditioner was cold and icy, and there were not many people there. It wasn't crowded at all. The level of consumption on the second floor was much higher than on the first floor. Regular students wouldn't go there for their meals. The moment they came up, they scanned the cafeteria and saw Bai Wei and Yu Hao sitting on the seats to the right. The dishes were already prepared, still steaming hot. It was evident that they just came out of the stove not long ago. This was a unique feature of the second floor. Not only were the dishes exquisite and delicious, but they were also cooked on the spot. On the first floor, all the dishes were cooked beforehand and put into trays. The cafeteria aunties just had to scoop the dishes the students chose. The spoons they used to scoop the dishes were shared. After taking out one dish, they would use it to scoop another dish. Hence, all the different flavors were mixed, and it was a suffering to one's taste buds. Have you tried the taste of mixing stir-fried tomato with egg, twice-cooked pork, fish-flavored eggplant, and once you did, you would never want to try it again. If you were a little late, you could only eat leftover dishes and rice. The dishes would be cold, and they were all vegetable stems and leftover gravy. The four of them chatted happily and ate at the same time. Halfway through their meal, Yu Hao suddenly pointed in a certain direction and asked, "Isn't that Yuan Zhenghua?" Suji and Bai Wei immediately looked in the direction of his finger. "Hey, it's really that brat?" Suji scoffed. "The pighead beside him is that Li Rongcheng." Bai Wei's eyes suddenly dropped wide open as she asked in confusion. "What pighead?" Suji and Yu Hao were stunned at the same time. Then, they looked carefully. "Oh my god, haha, that's really young Master Li Rongcheng. How did he become like this?" The two of them were astounded. Then, they burst out laughing. Could it be? The moment Bai Wei started speaking, Suji and Yu Hao abruptly thought of something. They looked at Wang Teng with a strange expression. When Wang Teng saw Li Rongcheng's appearance, he remembered that he seemed to have pushed some blame on this young man that night at the Wild Rose pub. He coughed awkwardly and said, "Don't talk nonsense if you don't have evidence." Chapter 17, Don't Leave After School Ends. Chapter 17, Don't Leave After School Ends. Yu Hao and Suji couldn't help but laugh out loud again when they saw Wang Teng acting innocent, as if this had nothing to do with him. Bai Wei tried her best to control her laughter. However, she was having a hard time. At the end, when her friends burst out laughing, she couldn't control herself anymore and started laughing along with them. Li Rongcheng was in a bad mood during these past 2 days. Yesterday, he went to the Wild Rose pub to play and hook up with 2 young working ladies. He wanted to bring them to a hotel and talk about life and ambitions. Just as he was about to succeed, a group of gangsters broke into the pub and started yelling. "Who is Li Rongcheng? Come out if you dare." Li Rongcheng was extremely infuriated at that time. He stood up at once and scolded, "I am Li Rongcheng. Who's your owner? Why didn't he put you on a leash? Why did he release you?" The group of gangsters was burning with anger, too, not caring about anything anymore. They rushed up and threw a sack over Li Rongcheng. Li Rongcheng probably never expected these people to be beginner stage or intermediate stage martial disciples. Although he was an advanced stage martial disciple, in front of an entire bunch of beginner stage and advanced stage martial disciples, he lost in numbers. Also, he didn't know that these people would start fighting directly, so he was caught off guard. At the same time, since he was inexperienced, he got controlled by them within a split second. This bunch of people knocked Li Rongcheng unconscious and brought him to a dilapidated warehouse. The sinister-looking youth, Zhao Gangbao, was waiting there. The instant he saw Li Rongcheng tied up, he asked his lackeys to beat him without even opening the sack. They only removed the sack after they vented their anger. When they took a careful look, they discovered this wasn't the right person. While the bunch of gangsters exchanged glances with one another, Zhao Gangbao started cursing in anger. Then, he vented all his rage on Li Rongcheng, again. Another round of beating that was too horrible to look at followed. During that time, Li Rongcheng was completely at a loss. Who am I? Where am I? Where am I going? Zhao Gangbao and his men left after they let out their anger, leaving Li Rongcheng lying on his back in the run-down warehouse. Tears of helplessness and injustice flowed down the corner of his eyes. From the start to the end, he didn't know what was happening. Slowly, he took out his phone with trembling hands and called 120. That was how he got sent to the hospital for emergency treatment. Fortunately, it was only external injuries. Li Rongcheng was an advanced stage martial disciple, so his physique was stronger than a normal person. He could recover faster. Hence, he was able to recover and came to school all alive and kicking today. But, there was still a ball of flame in his heart. Everyone was an eyesore to him. Morning ended amidst the students' strange expressions when they saw him. They wanted to laugh but didn't dare to. A few students who laughed secretly were beaten by him violently. He came to the cafeteria to have his meal, but the instant he went up to the second floor, he heard peals of laughter. The flame in his heart was ignited immediately. His face turned green with anger. "Damn it! Why are you laughing?" Li Rongcheng charged towards Wang Teng and his friends. Suji wasn't an easy person to bully. He stood up and rebutted, "My mouth is on my body. Why is that any of your business?" Everyone was clear of each other's background. The Li family was more powerful than the Su family, but their families wouldn't be at loggerheads with each other just because of a conflict between 2 younger generations. Conflicts between the younger generation would be settled by the younger generation. This was a silent rule consented to by everyone. If the older generations got involved, they were throwing their dignity on the ground for others to trample on. They were all respected people, dignity was like life to them. They wouldn't lose it for such a small thing. In the past, Suji might be a little afraid of Li Rongcheng, as he was an advanced stage martial disciple, but now, he wasn't scared. He had Wang Teng supporting him. Suji, you're getting bold. How dare you speak to me like this? Li Rongcheng laughed hideously and suddenly raised his fist, aimed for Suji's face. Suji felt depressed. Li Rongcheng didn't act according to the script. As rich second generations, shouldn't they hurl insults at each other first? Why was he raising his fists so quickly? Where did he throw his dignity as a rich second generation? He didn't know that Li Rongcheng was seething in anger the entire day. A little stimulation was enough to make him explode. The power of this fist wasn't small. The strong wind caused Suji's cheeks to hurt. He believed that if this fist hit him, his nose would collapse entirely. I'm gone. Suji closed his eyes instinctively. But, the pain he was anticipating didn't come. He opened his eyes a little. Through the small crack, he saw a hand firmly grabbing Li Rongcheng's wrist, stopping him from moving a single inch. Young Master Li, anger is harmful to the body, Wang Teng said casually. Wang Teng. Li Rongcheng was flabbergasted. Everyone knew that Wang Teng was hopeless in his studies, but he was actually displaying strong martial arts ability now. Yuan Zhenghua, who was standing beside Li Rongcheng, opened his eyes wide in surprise. He had a look of disbelief. In the past, he was Wang Teng's friend too. But as time went by, he tilted towards Li Rongcheng and cut ties with Wang Teng and his friends. Yuan Zhenghua had stayed beside Wang Teng for a long time. However, he never once realized that Wang Teng had such abilities. Suji regained his senses and stood behind Wang Teng with lingering fear. Then, he glared at Yuan Zhenghua proudly to mock him for being blind. On the other side, Li Rongcheng struggled forcefully. He noticed that no matter how much force he used, Wang Teng's hand continued to hook firmly around his wrist like steel. He couldn't break free despite his best efforts. Let go of my hand. Li Rongcheng said fiercely. His face was green with anger. Wang Teng released his grip as asked. Li Rongcheng was still pulling himself back, so he landed on his butt. Young Master Li, why are you so careless? Hurry and get up. The floor is cold, Wang Teng said in concern. Li Rongcheng pointed at Wang Teng. He was so angry that he didn't know what to say. He climbed up from the ground and said furiously, Wang Teng, I didn't expect you to hide your true power. No matter what the reason is, our grudge is formed today. Do you have the guts to have a duel with me? Yes, Wang Teng retracted his smile and answered while looking into his eyes. Okay. When school ends in the afternoon, we will have a showdown at the stadium. Li Rongcheng turned around and walked down the stairs after he finished speaking. Yuan Zhenghua glanced at Wang Teng, but he didn't dare to exchange gazes with him. He hurriedly chased after Li Rongcheng. Young Master Li, aren't we eating? Eat your head. I'm full from anger. After Li Rongcheng left, Bai Wei asked worriedly, Brother Wang Teng, are you really going to fight with him? Before Wang Teng could reply, Yu Hao answered for him, this is a martial arts duel. Since he agreed, he will definitely fight with him. This is the rule. Little mouse, what you said isn't right, Wang Teng suddenly smiled and said. Yu Hao gave him a puzzled look. Wang Teng continued explaining, rules are set by men. You can decide whether you want to abide by them or not. Just make sure that you don't go against your heart. Yu Hao was a little clueless. He didn't understand Wang Teng. Brother Wang Teng, are you confident that you can beat Li Rongcheng? Suji asked. Why would I agree if I didn't? Wang Teng smiled and asked him back. It's all right. Don't worry. Let's sit down and have our meal. Then, we can go back and rest. We can talk about this when the time comes. We will follow you to your duel after school ends, Bai Wei said. Sure. The 3 lessons in the afternoon were physics, math, and biology. Every lesson, the teacher and his classmates would drop many attribute bubbles. This allowed Wang Teng's study attributes to rise to another level. He wasn't bothered by Li Rongchen's dual request at all. Instead, he continued doing what he was supposed to do. Chapter 18, Week 2 Week. Chapter 18, Week 2 Week. For the entire day, Wang Teng swam in the sea of knowledge until school ended at 5:30 p.m. Even then, he was still yearning to learn more. He felt that in his past life, he was held up by his title as a rich second generation. If not, he would have definitely been a good student who loved studying. Fortunately, he still had a chance in this lifetime, even though he missed the opportunity in his previous life. From this day onwards, he must become a model student with all-rounded development in morality, intelligence, and physical education. When he thought about this, Wang Teng instantly felt the red towel in front of his chest became even brighter. After the school bell rang, all the students surged out of their classrooms. Wang Teng didn't pack his things up. Rather, he threw his textbooks in the drawer. Then, he met Suji, Bai Wei, and Yu Hao. The four of them went to the stadium together. Wang Teng was relaxed and didn't show any hint of worry. On the contrary, Suji, Bai Wei, and Yu Hao kept exchanging glances with one another. They hesitated to speak to Wang Teng. Bai Wei plucked up her courage and smiled at Wang Teng. She said, "Brother Wang Teng, shall we have a meal first? You will only have the strength to fight if you fill up your stomach." Yes, why don't we have some food first? Li Rongchen has a lot of spare time. You can let him wait for a while longer. Maybe he's going for a meal too. Suji and Yu Hao nodded in agreement as they started convincing Wang Teng together. Wang Teng said in a helpless tone, "You shouldn't exercise after eating. You will get gastroptosis." Oops. The three of them realized that they seemed to have made a stupid suggestion. All right, there's no need to worry. Li Rongchen is an advanced stage martial disciple, but he's not my match. Wang Teng could tell that they were worried about him, so he consoled them. Brother Wang Teng, are you also an advanced stage martial disciple instead of an intermediate stage martial disciple? Yu Hao asked in shock. Wang Teng nodded. The three of them were dumbstruck. An advanced stage martial disciple. Wang Teng was actually an advanced stage martial disciple. They knew that Wang Teng was a martial disciple, but being an advanced stage martial disciple and an intermediate stage martial disciple were two different concepts. An advanced stage martial disciple could apply for the martial arts course. They had a high probability of becoming a martial warrior in the future. At that time, the distance between them and Wang Teng would only grow bigger. This was beyond comprehension. They were peers who were really familiar with one another. At first, they thought that all of them were the same, but the other party had soared up straight into the sky. They said that they would fail together, yet he secretly became better. Complex emotions instantly sprung up in their hearts. After some time, the four of them arrived at the stadium. Every school viewed students who practiced martial arts with high importance. In order to provide a training ground for them, they especially emptied a floor in the stadium. Stadium, second floor. Li Rongchen was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed in front of him. He looked impatient from the wait. Yuan Zhenghua was standing beside him with water and towels in hand. He really looked like he was currying favor with Li Rongchen. Suji felt his blood boiling with anger when he saw Yuan Zhenghua's actions. Why did this fellow choose to be another person's dog when he could be a human? You finally came. Li Rongchen turned his head and squinted slightly as he glared at Wang Teng. Young Master Li, you're really early. Did you skip class? Wang Teng mocked. Don't bullshit with me. I'm using a blade. What's your weapon? You can choose one, Li Rongchen replied impatiently. I will use a blade too. Wang Teng walked to the side and took a standard blade from the weapons rack. The back of the blade wasn't thick, and it was relatively longer. It looked like the Tang blade in his past life. He weighed the blade and found it a little light. Wang Teng shook his head silently. It seemed like he needed to find some time to get himself a weapon. He would make do with what he had for now. Wang Teng held the blade and walked opposite Li Rongcheng. Suji and Bai Wei's faces turned pale when they saw them using weapons. Why are they using weapons? What if they get hurt? What do you think? This is a martial arts duel, not playing house. Yu Hao took a deep breath and said. This was what he said on the surface, but he had only become a beginner stage martial disciple not long ago. This was also his first time facing such a situation. Wang Teng, you have good strength, so you have probably become an advanced stage martial disciple. Honestly, I'm shocked. Everyone is mistaken about you. You hide very well. But, who gave you the confidence to challenge me with a blade? Obviously, Li Rongcheng looked down on Wang Teng. He had started practicing martial arts ever since he was 15 years old. He became an advanced stage martial disciple in 3 years. During these 3 years, he only practiced his blade skills, advancing it to the big achievement state. Thus, he had the right to be arrogant. He also found it funny that Wang Teng dared to use a blade in front of him. Let's start. Wang Teng didn't say much and went directly to the point. Sure. Li Rongcheng opened his eyes wide and shouted fiercely. He stomped his feet on the ground. Boom. A dull and loud sound resounded in the hall. There seemed to be waves churning in the air. Due to the recoil of the force, his entire body flew towards Wang Teng like an arrow leaving its bow. In that split second, the ferocious aura appalled Yuan Zhenghua, Suji, and the other two. However, Wang Teng, who was the first to bear the hit, showed no change in his expression. Li Rongcheng thought that he was shocked from fear, so he displayed even more contempt on his face. He raised his blade up high and struck it down in a simple move. Just as the long blade was about to touch Wang Teng's body, he shifted without any warning and appeared on Li Rongcheng's right. When his blade cut the air instead of flesh, Li Rongcheng's expression changed instantly. He forcefully twisted his body and slashed his blade at Wang Teng at 180 degrees. Clang! The two blades collided and let out sparks and metallic clangs. Another dull sound was heard. Before Li Rongcheng could figure out what the hell was going on, he felt a pain in the back of his head and lost consciousness. Weak, so weak. Wang Teng shook his head. Basic blade skill *20. Strength *12. He picked up the attribute bubbles Li Rongcheng had dropped and walked to the side to place the blade back. Yuan Zhenghua, Suji, and the rest of the people finally regained their senses. They stared at Wang Teng with their mouths agape. The exchange between them looked simple, but the speed of advanced stage martial disciples was more than a little exaggerating. The four of them only saw everything in a blur. As the saying went, the insider knows the ropes, while the outsider just comes along for the ride. The four of them were purely watching the show. Even Yu Hao wasn't considered an insider. Hence, they didn't understand the battle, only feeling that Wang Teng was very powerful. Especially the time. It was too short. Was it 3 seconds or 5? Li Rongcheng lost even before they could fight properly. They watched Wang Teng as he put back his weapon and walked over. He seemed to be muttering to himself, too weak, why is he so weak? That's impossible. The four of them were rendered speechless. Li Rongcheng was a real advanced stage martial disciple. He was one of the top 5 most powerful students in Donghai No. 1 high school. Yet, Wang Teng said that he was weak. Brother, we are close friends. Do you have to act so arrogantly? But, this also indirectly showed how powerful Wang Teng was. Li Rongcheng wasn't weak among the students, but Wang Teng was stronger than him. In fact, he was much stronger. Let's go home and eat dinner. Wang Teng called out to his 3 friends as he walked down the stairs. Suji, Bai Wei, and Yu Hao hurriedly caught up to him. On the other side, Yuan Jinghua was left standing alone on the same spot in a daze. He didn't dare to greet Wang Teng. This Wang Teng was unfamiliar to him. At the same time, he was frightening. In the past, Wang Teng didn't like studying. However, since his family background was better than his, Yuan Jinghua didn't dare to offend him. Now, he felt fear towards Wang Teng personally. He had betrayed Wang Teng. Would he take it to heart? What if he came to find him for trouble one day when he wasn't in a good mood? The instant he thought of this, Yuan Jinghua felt anxious. He looked at the unconscious Li Rongcheng on the ground. He didn't seem to be able to protect him. Regret filled up his heart immediately. Chapter 19, Gunshot. Chapter 19, Gunshot. As they walked out of the stadium, the other three people were exceptionally excited. They never stopped talking on the way back. Amazing. You're so powerful. Brother Wang Teng, our advanced stage martial disciples all so powerful. To a normal person, an advanced stage martial disciple is quite strong. Wang Teng lit a cigarette and took a puff of it. He slowly breathed the smoke out and said in a calm tone. Haha, this is great. With you protecting us, no one will dare to bully us. Suji laughed heartily. Brother Wang Teng, do you think I can be as strong as you in the future? Yu Hao clenched his fists secretly and asked with envy. You just need to practice hard. Becoming an advanced stage martial disciple won't be difficult for you, Wang Teng replied. Bai Wei walked beside them without saying anything. However, her gaze would land on Wang Teng occasionally. There was a small sweet smile appearing at the corner of her lips. The group of four parted at the school gate and went back to their own homes. On the way, Wang Teng kept wondering why Li Rongcheng was so weak. He wasn't acting. He sincerely felt that Li Rongcheng was too weak. When he drove the car along the roads and looked at the other cars zooming past him, he suddenly got enlightened. Speed. Right, it was speed. Looking at all the martial arts in the world, only speed could never be defeated. His speed was much faster than Li Rongcheng, so to him, his attacks looked slow. Li Rongcheng was so slow that Wang Teng only used 2 moves to knock him unconscious on the ground. The speed attribute on the attribute panel couldn't be perceived directly. Wang Teng kept picking up attributes and his points kept rising, but he had never tested his actual speed before. Today, his potential suddenly exploded, and Li Rongcheng did not even have a chance to retaliate. At night, Wang Teng finished his dinner at home and went to the Jixin martial house for practice as well as to collect attributes. For the next few days, his life was calm and smooth. During the day, he would attend school and go for lessons. He collected attributes to upgrade his studies and occasionally teased his beautiful but cold table buddy. He had a great time. After these few days, his studies had improved tremendously. If he took an exam now, he was confident that he could get 90 points. This level was enough for him. He wasn't planning to become the top scorer in the standard exam. Also, this was already a huge leap from his past results. At night, he would sign in at the Jixin martial house for training and collect attributes to raise his martial arts cultivation. Now, all his martial arts attributes had broken through the limit of a martial disciple. Enlightenment, 51. Physique 121. Strength 1356. Speed, 632. Battle techniques, basic fist skill, mastery, basic footwork, mastery, basic sword skill, mastery, basic blade skill, mastery. Knowledge, basic subjects, full marks. The limit for the physique of an advanced stage martial disciple was 100. The limit of strength was 1000 kilograms and 100 meters in 4 seconds for speed. All his attributes had far surpassed those limits. Some time ago, he had specifically tested his speed and realized that he could run 100 meters in 2 seconds. This was much faster than the advanced stage martial disciples. It might only be a 2 seconds difference, but many people might not be able to cross this hurdle even after 3 to 5 years. Think about how hard it was to break the 100 meters sprint record for the Olympics. This was proof of its difficulty. In addition to his mastery in basic footwork, if Wang Teng was to meet another advanced stage martial disciple, he would dominate them without a doubt. Getting to here, there was a need to emphasize the fact that all of Wang Teng's battle techniques had reached mastery state. What was mastery? As its name suggested, it was mastery to the smallest detail of the technique. It was a state above the perfected state. What kind of power did a mastery state battle technique possess? A simple example would make it clear. If a person was attacked and he had reached the perfected state of basic footwork, he would need to move more than half a meter to evade the attack. If the person had reached the mastery state of basic footwork, he would be able to remain unscathed by maneuvering close to the attacker. The distance between the two would be no more than a few centimeters. Hence, the difference between the two states could only be depicted clearly during an actual battle. One could say that Wang Teng's current ability was only a step away from an official martial warrior. Once he started cultivating the force, he would become a real martial warrior. On Friday, after the lesson ended, Wang Teng went back home as per usual. He drove his car along the road and looked at the scenery outside the car window. Yet, in his heart, he was pondering how he could get a force cultivation skill scripture. His current stage was known as a prospective martial warrior. Once he started cultivating the force, his status would change. But, the force skill scripture was different from the foundation battle techniques and aerobics that any martial disciple or average person could practice. The imparting of force skill scriptures had always been tightly regulated. One could pass the martial arts exam and learn it in universities. This was the path with the most freedom. Another way was to apply for a prospective martial warrior exam at martial arts academies. Once he passed and the academy found nothing wrong with his background, they would impart their force skill scriptures to him. This way, he would become a martial warrior of the martial arts academy. He would be on the same boat as the martial arts academy. The last method was to become a vassal of some powerful family. If you were able to gain the other party's trust, they might impart their force skill scriptures to you. However, this was equivalent to selling your life. The martial arts exam was after the university entrance exam. Furthermore, he had to wait until he entered the university to learn the skill scriptures. It took too long. Wang Teng didn't consider this option. Should he go to the martial arts academy to become a prospective martial warrior? No way, no way. Wang Teng's family knew his progress. He had only started practicing martial arts not long ago, and yet, he was already on the way to becoming a martial warrior. If unscrupulous people laid their eyes on him, things would turn troublesome. Then should he become a vassal for other martial warrior families? Forget it. He was still a rich second generation. He would be lowering his status if he became other people's lackey. As he was pondering to himself, he heard a loud explosion in front of him. A great cloud of smoke was billowing out in front of him. The intersection in front of him was jammed for some reason, and the car ahead braked abruptly. It looked like there was a rear-end collision. Wang Teng's reaction was swift. He immediately stepped on the brake. However, the distance was too near, so the car still jerked forward due to inertia. Boom! He knocked into the boot of the car. Beep, beep, beep. Ring, ring, ring. In an instant, the honking of the cars and the sirens of the police cars intertwined together. The scene was messy and chaotic. This part of the road was completely paralyzed. Wang Teng frowned. He had no choice but to get out of his car to look at what had happened. He needed to go back home for dinner. What is happening? Oh my God, what's going on? The car is wrecked. The drivers stuck their heads out of their cars and started cursing. Bang! Bang! Bang. Right then, a few more loud sounds stunned the scene into silence in a blink of an eye. Gunshots. Wang Teng was astounded. I'm sure I didn't hear wrong. That was definitely gunshots. Robbery in daylight. Riot. Or was it kidnapping? All kinds of thoughts flashed through Wang Teng's mind. Suddenly, he saw a few people dashing over. Based on their speed, they must be martial disciples. Wang Teng made his judgment in his mind. Then, he hurriedly shifted to the side. He didn't know what was happening, so it was better to mind his own business. He wanted to step away, but unfortunately, it didn't mean that troubles wouldn't look for him. When these people ran past him, the one with the scar on his face suddenly shouted, "Wait! What is it?" his companions asked him in a hurry. "The police are arriving soon. We're too passive if we run like this. We should kidnap a hostage so that we can negotiate with them." The man wanted to grab Wang Teng as he spoke. Just as Wang Teng was about to resist, the man with the scar on his face raised a gun with his other hand and aimed it at his head. "Be obedient. If not, I will shoot you." He was on tenterhooks. The intense aura of death caused Wang Teng's mind to explode, and the blood in his body started flowing furiously. His heart stopped beating for a split second. Then, it started palpitating. Chapter 20, So, I can only kill them. Chapter 20, So, I can only kill them. Danger. Extreme danger. Although this was Wang Teng's second lifetime, it was the first time someone was pointing a gun directly at his head. In the face of life and death, the fear was terrifying. He was reborn, but he hadn't experienced an actual death before. Back then, he felt that he just woke up from a deep sleep. It was nothing compared to the situation now. The black muzzle felt like a terrifying huge beast opening its mouth. Inside, it was hell, and it felt eerie. The beast seemed to be waiting to swallow him whole. Terrifying. Horrifying. Immediately, Wang Teng's body froze, and his soul trembled uncontrollably. Even though he was practicing martial arts, he was still a normal person. He had never met such a situation before. Also, at such a close distance, he could clearly see the silver patterns on the body of the pistol. They were force runes. This was a force rune gun. It was a deadly threat to advanced stage martial disciples, as well as martial warriors. Hence, even though he had reached the speed of 50 meters per second and his footwork was at the mastery stage, he didn't dare to move when there was a force rune gun pointing at his head. Damn it! Wang Teng cursed in his heart. Then, he instantly gave in. He gave in within a split second. He gave up without any hesitation. "Don't shoot. I will cooperate with you," Wang Teng said in a hurry. He was afraid that the other part would kill him out of pure unhappiness. He had no choice but to be a coward. This was too frightening. He couldn't help but tremble in fear. "Be obedient. Don't think of playing any tricks. If you do, I will let you have a taste of this gun." The man with the scar on his face pushed Wang Teng and threatened. Thus, Wang Teng was forced to join their escape gang. He observed them secretly. There were a total of 5 people in this group, and they all had force rune guns in their hands. From their aura, they were at least intermediate stage martial disciples. When Wang Teng's gaze swept past 3 of them, he paused instinctively. Each one of them was carrying a huge bag that was stuffed to the brim. The zip wasn't closed properly, so one could faintly see the notes inside. Could it be that they robbed a bank? I remember that there is a bank not far away in front. Wang Teng suddenly felt that his situation wasn't good. He seemed to have gotten involved in a troublesome matter. Does this mean that they were just passing by and I accidentally became their hostage? Wang Teng was a little speechless, feeling innocent and unlucky. He was able to meet robbers on his way home. Meeting them was all right. Why did they choose him as their hostage when there were so many others around? Were they bullying him? He didn't know that the man with a scar on his face chose him because he was driving a sports car. A rich second generation definitely had a higher status than an average person. Hence, he took Wang Teng as his hostage. Wang Teng was forced into a small alley as the robbers seized him by his arm. Then, he kept running and making turns in the alley, losing his sense of direction. He didn't know how long he ran. He pretended that he was extremely weak and started panting heavily after running for a short time. Damn it, this rich second generation must have slept with too many women. Look at how weak he is. One of the robbers cursed Wang Teng. He was probably envious, jealous, or just didn't like Wang Teng. Shall we kill him directly? Bringing him along will be a hindrance, another robber wearing a cap said ruthlessly. Wang Teng's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. This person was so cold-blooded. He only ran a little slower, yet he already wanted to kill him. Did he have to be so cruel? Don't kill me. I can run. I will definitely keep up with you, Wang Teng said frantically. Forget it. We have already come this far with him. It's just a few more meters. Everything will be fine once we get in the car, the leader of the robbers replied. The few of them ran for another 10 minutes. Wang Teng appeared exhausted, but he still managed to keep up with them. A white van was parked at the side of an old street. One robber pulled the car door open and stuffed Wang Teng inside. The engine of the van started with a loud roar. The van drove in the city at high speed. Suddenly, the police siren was heard behind them. FK, the police have caught up with us. The robber, who was driving, slapped the steering wheel and stepped heavily on the accelerator. The van charged forward. The van in front, listen. Stop at the side of the road immediately. Stop at the side of the road immediately. You must be kidding. The driver stuck his hand out of the car and gave the cars behind his middle finger. To the right. Go up the highway, the leader of the robbers said calmly. The driver turned the steering wheel. The head turned sharply as the van's boot skidded for a distance, creating a long mark on the ground. Then, it started flying towards the right. The police car in front overshot by a huge distance before it managed to stop. It turned and started chasing the van. Hence, the police car and the van started their cat and mouse game on the highway. During the chase, many cars collided with one another, causing traffic congestions. Drivers with road rage symptoms stuck their heads out to curse, calling the van in front. If you don't stop your car now, we will open fire. The robbers turned a deaf ear to the police. A gunshot was heard immediately thereafter. However, it was fired at the sky. Since there were too many people in the city, the police didn't dare to fire randomly. This gunshot was purely to scare the robbers. But, the robbers weren't easy to deal with. The more you tried to scare them, the more vicious they would get. The man with a scar on his face pushed his gun against Wang Teng and stuck his head out of the car. He shouted fiercely, "If you dare to shoot, I will kill him first." Wang Teng felt like a puppet. He felt weak and helpless. As the van sped along the highway, the wind blew against his hair, causing his mind to be in a mess. Who on earth did I provoke? Wang Teng asked the heavens helplessly. As expected, the police behind decided to spare the rat to save the dishes. They didn't dare fire anymore. After seeing their actions, the man with the scar on his face pulled Wang Teng back into the car. He proudly said to the other robbers, "Look, this is the benefits of having a hostage. You did well." The leader wasn't stingy with his compliments. Wang Teng rolled his eyes while silently ridiculing them in his heart. "You are really smart." Unfortunately, it was too early for them to feel happy. More than 10 police cars were chasing, obstructing, and intercepting the robbers' van. The robbers had underestimated the determination of the police. Although they were crafty, they were still stopped in front of an office building. "FK, we are just taking some money to spend. Do they have to chase us so fervently? Shut up, the leader of the robbers shouted with a cold expression. They had no choice but to alight the van. Then, they retreated into the office building while dragging Wang Teng along. You have been surrounded from all sides. I repeat, you are surrounded. Hurry up. Lay down your arms and surrender. The sentence kept coming out from the police's loudspeaker. The robbers ignored them and dashed into the office building. It was after work timing, so most people had already left the office. No one could be seen in the lobby. The robbers went up to the third floor, probably wanting to occupy the high ground. The third floor belonged to a fashion design company. There were still a few professionals working overtime inside, and most of them were ladies. The robbers kicked the door open and charged inside. One of them fired a shot to take control of the scene. His scare tactics made the scene even rowdier. The shouts of the anger of the office ladies turned into screams of terror. The leader of the robbers aimed his muzzle at a middle-aged lady and pulled the trigger. The other party's thigh got hit, and she screamed in pain. The middle-aged lady looked like someone with a high status in the company. Before the robbers broke in, she was reprimanding her subordinates. But in a blink of an eye, everything turned tragic. The other office ladies shrieked when they saw blood. Some of their voices even broke. Shut up. I will kill anyone who makes another sound, the leader warned coldly. The office ladies quickly covered their mouths in unplanned unison. They were afraid that if they made a sound and stood out, the robbers would kill them. The middle-aged lady, who was shot, forcefully resisted the urge to make any sounds due to the pain. Cold sweat could be seen all over her forehead. Wang Teng frowned. This bunch of robbers was outrageous and ruthless. They didn't care about human life at all. This was too crazy. Go to the corner and squat down with your hands over your head. If anyone dares to create trouble, my gun might accidentally fire at you. A robber waved his gun and signaled everyone to squat in a corner. However, Wang Teng wasn't so lucky as he was pushed to the window. He looked down and saw around 20 police cars surrounding the office building. Many police officers had their guns raised at the windows of the building. Leader, what should we do? The man with a scar on his face asked furiously. The leader didn't bother to reply with words. Instead, he fired a shot straight at the police. The police officers hurriedly hid behind their shields or cars. Listen, prepare a helicopter for us within an hour. If we don't see the helicopter 1 minute after the allocated time, we will kill one hostage. If 2 minutes pass, we will kill 2 hostages. We will kill until everyone here dies. The police weren't the only ones who had heard his words. Wang Teng and the other hostages in the building heard him too. The employees of the fashion design company turned pale with fear. As the first hostage, Wang Teng's heart was raised to his throat, and his face turned black. But these 5 robbers had 5 force rune guns with them. He wasn't confident he could deal with them. He could only place his hope in the police. He prayed that they would be able to prepare the helicopter in time. Time continued to pass slowly. 1 hour had almost passed. However, there was no helicopter. The hostages had looks of despair on their faces. It's almost 1 minute past the allocated time. If the helicopter doesn't come soon, you are forcing us to kill a hostage, the leader shouted at the police cars below. Don't act rashly. The helicopter is on the way. It will arrive soon. The person in charge below was perspiring profusely because of anxiety as he used the loudspeaker to reply to the robbers. The leader didn't say anything. From his reaction, he didn't seem to care about the reason. As long as the time exceeded the deadline, he would kill someone. 1 minute passed in a blink of an eye. Brat, you, come over. The leader of the robbers pointed at Wang Teng. It's too bad. You are unlucky. The man with a scar on his face gave a hideous smile. He pushed Wang Teng towards his leader. Wang Teng sighed. He felt that he didn't look at the almanac before he left his house this morning. This must be why he was so unlucky today. Initially, he thought that if he acted as an obedient hostage, the robbers would let him go after achieving their goal. But, from the looks of it now, he was too naive. I can't just wait for death. There is no route of retreat now. They want to kill me, but I don't want to die. I'm still young and I was given a chance to be reborn. How can I die here? I can't let that happen. No one can kill me. My new life is just starting. I have many regrets to make up for and many things I want to do this lifetime. I need to be filial to my parents. I have to become a martial arts warrior and make them proud. I also want to see how the Xingu continent looks like. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Thus, I have to kill them. Chapter 21, Pentakill. Chapter 21, Pentakill. I'm so obedient, cooperative, and cute. Why do they still want to kill me? Wang Teng didn't understand at all. His mother was right. A cute and handsome rich second generation like him must protect himself properly when he was outside. The outside world was too dangerous. His life could be in peril at any moment. Wang Teng walked towards the leader of the robbers step by step. His whole body was trembling with excitement. Kill them. I must kill them. They are all extremely wicked and evil people. 1 step. 2 steps. As he got closer and closer, the other hostages looked at him with compassion in their eyes. They felt pity for him, but at the same time, there was a hint of relief in their gazes. They felt glad that they weren't the first to get killed. They were shivering in fear too. This bunch of robbers wasn't even willing to let off such a cute young boy. There was no limit to their cruelness. Why hadn't the police's helicopter arrived? They would be the ones getting killed if it didn't come soon. Kill them. Wang Teng almost had a mental breakdown. He was extremely nervous. His palm, back, and forehead were drenched with perspiration. There was no other way beside killing them. 3 steps, 4 steps. Very soon, he was less than half a meter away from the leader. Hurry up and come over, shouted the leader impatiently. Enough. This is close enough. I can't wait anymore. Wang Teng raised his head abruptly. His eyes were bloodshot. Why do you have to force me? The leader of the robbers felt that Wang Teng had probably lost his mind in the face of fear, hence his nonsense. But, the next instant, the eyes of the robbers and the hostages widened in surprise. The leader of the robbers looked as though he had seen a ghost. A moment ago, this hostage was still acting like a little lamb. The next second, he turned into a crazy fierce bear. His aura transformed in an instant. Everything felt slow, but it just took an instant. When Wang Teng raised his head, there was no hesitation in his mind. His decision was firm and resolute as he stomped his feet heavily. The ceramic tiles on the ground shattered, and stone shards flew everywhere. The force exploded below his feet, pushing Wang Teng out abruptly. He shot out like an arrow from a bow and arrived in front of the leader within a split second. It was a result of extreme speed and mastery stage footwork. Wang Teng crossed the distance of half a meter within a blink of an eye. Even though the leader of the robbers could see him, he wasn't able to react in time. Wang Teng's fist was like a hammer pounding the iron as he raised it high and punched it down. His fist became bigger and bigger in the robber's eyes, shocking him senseless. The second he spoke the word, Wang Teng's full force attack had already landed on his head. The power of more than 1,000 kilograms was extremely frightening. It probably felt like a lorry driving past your head. The sound was crisp, as if a watermelon was crushed. First blood. It got crushed. However, Wang Teng didn't have any extreme feelings. At the moment, he was only thinking about the threat to his life. He killed one enemy yet, and there were still 4 left. They had guns. They were too scary. He must finish this battle as soon as possible. Hence, he didn't stop for a single second. He grabbed the leader's corpse tightly and smashed it at the robber standing behind with a scar on his face. At the same time, Wang Teng dashed forward. His mind was churning furiously. All the basic battle techniques he had learned so far seemed to be integrating into one whole. Footwork was merged with speed. Sword skills and blade skills were merged into the fist skills. He didn't have any weapons in his hand, so he used his fists as the sword and his legs as the blade. The robber with a scar on his face was in a flurry when his leader's corpse smashed into him. Wang Teng swept his leg from the left like a blade. Crack! The sound of bones cracking spooked the onlookers. The man shot out horizontally and slammed into the wall like a rag doll. He spat a mouthful of blood before his head tilted to the side. The guy was deader than dead. Double kill. The other three bandits panicked. But, they finally regained their senses and fired at Wang Teng. The runes reinforced bullets poured out of the guns, halting Wang Teng's advance. These bullets were faster and more powerful. Swoosh! The bullets tore through the air, bringing along a shrill screech with them as they charged towards the vital spots on Wang Teng's body. His head, heart, thigh. Wang Teng was well prepared. After he got rid of the man with the scar on the face, he shrunk his body. And did a perfect roll on the ground. In one smooth motion, he hid under the office desk. The bullets hit the wall and blasted a huge hole in it. When Wang Teng glanced at the hole, a lingering fear washed over him. He felt fortunate that he hadn't rashly resisted the robbers at the start. Based on how powerful these bullets were, they would definitely bore a bloody hole in his body. Even if he had an advanced stage martial disciple's physique, he wasn't bulletproof. This thought only stayed in his mind for a split second. Then, he immediately grabbed the chair in front of him and threw it out. At the same time, he dashed out in the other direction. The three robbers were extremely tense. When they saw something flying out, they instinctively fired multiple shots in that direction. Oh shit! Immediately after, they knew that they were in trouble. Wang Teng didn't give them time to regret it. He charged towards them from the other side and shot his fist out like a cannon, firing it at a robber's temple. The robber staggered and fell on the ground with a thud. Triple kill. One more down. Then, he turned to a robber who was 2 meters away from him. Wang Teng remembered this person. He was the first one who wanted to kill him. Thus, he exerted more power in his attack. Wang Teng clutched his hands together and smashed them down like a sledgehammer. The poor guy flew 3 meters backward. Quadra kill. Bang. Bang. The last robber was the driver. By now, he had realized that Wang Teng was extremely fierce and vicious. His companions couldn't handle his attack at all. They were either dead or seriously injured. He was so frightened that he kept retreating. In his flurry, he fired a few shots at Wang Teng. Wang Teng dodged, dashed beside the robber, and landed a punch. This was the simplest sword stab from the basic sword skill. One attack. Another attack. In the end, the final robber also fell to the floor. Pentakill. All 5 robbers were taken care of. From the time Wang Teng started attacking to the end of the battle, less than 1 minute had elapsed. The hostages were all flabbergasted. Their jaws almost touched the ground, but no sound came out. The middle-aged woman, who was injured, seemed to have temporarily forgotten her pain. She stared at him in a daze. We are both hostages. Why are you so outstanding and fierce? We are supposed to shiver in fear together, but you killed the robbers instead. Are you a devil? Pant, pant, pant. After the 5 robbers collapsed, Wang Teng was finally able to relax his taut nerves. He breathed in large mouthfuls of air. Exhaustion. A feeling of overwhelming exhaustion flooded his body. This battle had only lasted less than a minute, but his state of mind was tense, as he had been dancing on the edge of life and death. The adrenaline rushed through his vessels, and his body operated at an unprecedented high. This was mentally and physically draining for him. "Why did you force me?" Wang Teng muttered to himself while scanning the room. Suddenly, his face turned pale. The horrifying state of the robbers made his stomach churn, and the stomach acid almost spurted out of his throat. He hurriedly turned his head away. Coincidentally, he met the gaze of the hostages. These people had looks of fear on their faces. They were pale too, and some were even vomiting in the corner. However, their gazes were a bit weird. They didn't seem to be looking at a kind and honest high school student. Instead, they seemed to be looking at a perverted murderer. "Will you believe me if I said I'm a good person?" asked Wang Teng sincerely. The hostages shook their heads in unplanned unison. Then, they reacted quickly and started nodding their heads frantically. However, their guilty expressions weren't convincing at all. Chapter 22, I Just Want to Stay Alive. Chapter 22, I Just Want to Stay Alive. Wang Teng came out of the police station when it was nearing 9 p.m. Before this, he had called home and told his parents that he was having dinner with his classmates tonight. In actual fact, he was brought to the police station to record his statement. Fortunately, Wang Teng was a victim, so the police released him after they understood what had happened. The captain of the criminal police personally sent Wang Teng to the door. He passed a cigarette to him. "Want one?" Wang Teng didn't stand on ceremony. He directly took the cigarette and placed it in his mouth. The two of them lit their cigarettes and started smoking in front of the police station. "You know how to smoke at such a young age," Yang Zhenqiao smiled and teased Wang Teng. "Let's not talk about it." Wang Teng sighed and shook his head. Yang Zhenqiao didn't probe further. He dropped the casual attitude and said seriously, "Those robbers fled from other cities to our Donghai city. They have committed many heinous crimes, and they are all wanted criminals. You should be able to tell that they are all cruel and evil people. Their hands are stained with the blood of quite a few innocents. You are getting rid of evil for the people by killing them. Hence, don't feel too pressured." Wang Teng instantly felt much better. As expected, they were bad people. If I wasn't forced into a corner, why would a model student like me with all-rounded development in morality, intelligence, and physical education retaliate so violently? Yang Zhenqiao. This brat seemed a little shameless. Yang Zhenqiao felt that his concern was redundant. He said grumpily, "After we finish the procedures on our side, we will reward you with a silk banner and the bounty." "Huh? You are still going to give me a silk banner and bounty?" Wang Teng was a little shocked. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "There's no need for that. I don't deserve it." "Really? This gang of robbers has been on the wanted list for a long time, but no one managed to catch them? So, the bounty is extremely high. It's as much as 100,000. Yang Zhenqiao thought that Wang Teng didn't know what he was rejecting, so he kindly explained to him. "I really don't need it. I don't lack the money," Wang Teng replied casually. "You don't lack the money?" Yang Zhenqiao was speechless. This brat was really arrogant. "Why don't I donate the bounty to your station? You are the servants of the citizens. That is hard work. You can take it as my way of saying thank you," said Wang Teng. "Allow me to represent the police and thank you on their behalf." Yang Zhenqiao was filled with profound veneration. "Oh right, Captain Yang, before I was taken hostage, my car was abandoned in the middle of the road. Can you help me check if it was seized by the police?" Wang Teng suddenly remembered his sports car that was stuck in the traffic. "Okay, I will make a call and ask." After the call connected, Yang Zhenqiao spoke a few sentences. Then, he asked Wang Teng for his license plate number. The answer arrived very quickly. It was indeed seized. "Come, let me bring you over to collect your car," Yang Zhenqiao hung up and said. Okay. Wang Teng nodded and followed the guy. Honestly speaking, your attacks were a little ruthless. While walking, Yang Zhenqiao suddenly turned and said to Wang Teng. This is the first time I've encountered an issue like this. It looks like I really didn't know how to control my strength, Wang Teng said helplessly. Compared to you, my first time was very different. I almost failed miserably on an easy task. Luckily, a senior helped me. Yang Zhenqiao was immersed in his memory. Then, he exclaimed, you are so young, yet you are already an advanced stage martial disciple. You are stronger than me. I feel that within 2 years, you can become a martial warrior. Captain Yang, you are praising me too much. I was just lucky. Wang Teng remained humble. After some time, the duo arrived at their destination. They were asked to sign some papers before collecting the car. Yang Zhenqiao looked at the sports car in front of him and was rendered speechless. No wonder you felt that the 100,000 was nothing. You really don't need the money. Wang Teng got into the car and waved at Yang Zhenqiao. Captain Yang, thank you for today. I need to go home now. If not, my parents will be worried. You're welcome. I almost forgot that you're a high school student. Hurry up and go home. Yang Zhenqiao nodded. A man around 30 years old came beside Yang Zhenqiao, who was watching the sports car drive off in the distance. He asked, what is this young man's background? How is he able to make you send him off personally? He doesn't come from anywhere. But, he's an advanced stage martial disciple. Today, he personally killed 5 criminals carrying rune guns, empty-handed, Yang Zhenqiao replied. Advanced stage martial disciple. The man was astounded. He's only around 17, right? Yet, he's already an advanced stage martial disciple. He even managed to kill 5 criminals with rune guns on them empty-handed. That's really powerful. Where did this genius come from? Who knows? But he's really amazing. I'm afraid that when I meet him in the future, I can only look up to him, Yang Zhenqiao also exclaimed. The man nodded his head in agreement. Wang Teng didn't know the discussion going on between the two people behind him. He drove his car and went directly to the Jixin Martial House. After he reached the Martial Arts Academy, he directly headed to the second floor. Looking at the students practicing diligently in the training hall, his anxious nerves started to calm down. Wang Teng made a round around the hall and picked up the dropped attributes. He then walked in front of a sandbag and started practicing his fist skill. Wang Teng needed an avenue to let out his emotions. He needed to release the accumulated stress and pressure in his heart. Thus, he pounded the sandbag furiously. His arm formed a lingering shadow as he punched the sandbag. The sandbag started shaking violently due to the force of his punches. It seemed as though it was experiencing a storm. The students beside him unconsciously took a few steps back when they saw his crazy actions. This was so scary. Was this person a maniac? They needed to stay as far away from him as possible. While Wang Teng was practicing his fist skill, the image of him killing the 5 robbers kept replaying in his mind. If he was given a chance to choose again, would he attack so ruthlessly? The answer was yes. He wasn't used to it, but he didn't feel that he was wrong. A person who killed others would be killed in return by other people. Also, in that situation, the robbers would have retaliated even more violently if he hadn't finished them in a single move. They had rune guns. If he wasn't careful enough, he would be the one getting killed. Thus, kindness was undesirable. He did everything because he just wanted to live. After he finished practicing his fist skill, he started on his sword and blade skills. Wang Teng didn't want to stop even for a second. Instead, he wanted to be exhausted. That was the only way he was able to release all the pressure in his heart. Thus, Wang Teng practiced all the way until 11 p.m. After the students left, he dragged his tired body to his car and drove back home. Only when he reached home did he finally feel relieved and at peace. Son, weren't you eating dinner with your classmates? Why did you go to the martial arts academy? Li Xiaomei couldn't help but ask when she saw Wang Teng drenched in sweat and the look of exhaustion on his face. I went there after dinner. We need to be consistent in practicing martial arts, Wang Teng smiled and replied. You are really serious this time, my boy, Li Xiaomei said with relief. Hurry up and bath. I will make some supper for you. Come down and eat it later. Li Xiaomei's care and concern warmed up Wang Teng's cold heart. He smiled and walked upstairs. He took some clothes and entered the bathroom. Then, he opened the water tap. Cold water splashed on his tired body, seemingly washing everything away. After a cold bath, Wang Teng felt an unprecedented sense of relaxation. He felt light and free. He dried his hair and went down. Wow, this smells really good. Mom, what good food did you make? Your favorite egg noodles. I used Star Beast meat to make the soup and added some Star Beast meat inside too. Come and eat it. Li Xiaomei carried a bowl of noodles and walked out of the kitchen. No wonder it smells different. It's even more fragrant. Wang Teng took his chopsticks in anticipation and slurped a huge mouth of the noodles. This is delicious. Wang Teng swallowed everything into his stomach like a whale. The heat flowed out of his mouth as he complimented involuntarily. Eat more if you find it delicious. Practicing martial arts takes up too much of your energy. You need to replenish your stamina, Li Xiaomei said. Okay. Wang Teng finished more than half of the noodles within a few mouthfuls. He raised his head and asked, Mom, where's Dad? Why don't I see him around? He went overseas for business. He won't be returning for the next 2 days, Li Xiaomei replied. I see. Wang Teng finished his noodles quickly and patted his stomach in satisfaction. Then, he stood up and stretched his back. I'm so full. Mom, I will go up now. Rest early too. Okay. I will sleep after I wash the dishes, Li Xiaomei answered. Wang Teng went back to his own room and took out his phone. There were a few unread messages on his WeChat. Bai Wei had dropped a couple of messages, asking him what he was doing. One came from Yu Hao. This fellow wanted to practice martial arts with him. They had sent the messages when he was taken as a hostage, so he naturally couldn't reply to them. Since it was very late, he didn't message them back. He decided to wait until tomorrow. Wang Teng got on his computer and surfed the internet for a while. He watched the thick-headed netizens quarreling and making fun of other people. When he started feeling sleepy, he climbed onto his bed in a happy mood and said good night to himself. He closed his eyes and slipped into the dreamland. Chapter 23, Mountain Villa Gathering. Chapter 23, Mountain Villa Gathering. The next day was Saturday. Wang Teng woke up late, which was rare. He only opened his eyes past 8 am. The sunlight outside the window sprinkled in and landed on his face. Wang Teng raised his hand to block the light, taking some time to get used to the brightness. It's 8:45 am. Wang Teng glanced at the time. He climbed out of bed, brushed his teeth, and washed his face. Then, he went downstairs. Aunt Chen and Aunt Li, the maids at his house, had already started working. Aunt Chen was sweeping the floor while Aunt Li was dusting. The villa was huge and spacious, but it was hard to clean. It was impractical to clean the house themselves. You're awake. Come and have some breakfast, Li Xiaomei said when she saw him. Mom, I overslept. Why didn't you wake me up? Asked Wang Teng. You looked so tired yesterday, so I didn't call you. It's Saturday. 1 or 2 hours won't make a difference, Li Xiaomei replied. Young master has really changed. He's becoming more and more hard-working, Aunt Li smiled and said. Although Aunt Chen and Aunt Li were maids, they had a good relationship with Wang Teng's family. In the past, no matter how playful and cocky Wang Teng was, he never disrespected them in any way. This was attributed to Wang Shenqiu's strictness and Li Xiaomei's character education. A child was a reflection of his parents. I heard that young master is practicing martial arts now. My son used to do so in the past, but he didn't have the talent. He could only give up in the end. After all, the burden of practicing martial arts is too great for normal families like us, Aunt Chen agreed and continued. Don't praise him anymore. If not, he will become arrogant, Li Xiaomei smiled and replied. Wang Teng ate his breakfast while chatting with the maids. He also replied to Bai Wei and Yu Hao's messages whenever he could. After he finished his breakfast, he informed Li Xiaomei and drove his car out. Jixin Martial House, second floor of the Martial Disciple Training Building. Wang Teng greeted a few familiar students. Ah Teng, you're a little late today. Zhang Xiaoyang stopped his fist training and wiped the sweat off his forehead. He looked like he had been training for a few hours. I overslept, and my mom didn't wake me up, Wang Teng said helplessly. Ha ha ha, all mothers are the same. If I overslept, my mom would never wake me up either, Zhang Xiaoyang replied smilingly. Wang Teng laughed and shook his head. Oh right, I have something to tell you. I will become an advanced stage martial disciple soon, Zhang Xiaoyang said happily. Oh, congratulations. When are you preparing to level up? Wang Teng was shocked for a moment. However, he didn't find it strange. Zhang Xiaoyang's ability was already close to that of an advanced stage martial disciple. In the past, he had predicted that Zhang Xiaoyang would have his breakthrough any time now. I'll warm up in the morning before going for the test. If no accident happens, I'll go to the third floor for practice in the afternoon, Zhang Xiaoyang answered. Wang Teng nodded as he teased, there are more powerful people on the third floor. Don't get tortured. Humph, how is that possible? After I train for a period, I'll definitely catch up with them. Let's talk about you instead. Don't make me wait too long. Hurry up and become an advanced stage martial disciple soon. I think that I advance faster when I duel with you, Zhang Xiaoyang said. All right, I won't hold you up. Wang Teng smiled. The two of them chatted for a while and soon started practicing. They didn't waste any time. In the afternoon, Wang Teng went to watch Zhang Xiaoyang's test. All his indicators had reached the basic requirements. Therefore, he successfully became an advanced stage martial disciple and went to the third floor. Wang Teng was genuinely happy for him. Advanced stage martial disciple. He was one step closer to becoming a martial warrior. Although this one step was huge, it was what all martial disciples worked hard to achieve. When will I be able to become a martial warrior? I wish I can get a force skill scripture. Unfortunately, that's too difficult. Wang Teng pondered silently. He still didn't know what to do. Wang Teng spent the rest of his time in the martial arts academy. He picked up attributes and practiced furiously at the same time. He didn't even have the energy to tease that fatty, Wu Liang. Sunday, sometime past 9 am. Wang Teng was still practicing in the martial arts academy when he received a call from Suji. He said that there was a gathering today where they would be able to meet many friends from old and well-known families. Thus, he wanted to invite Wang Teng, Bai Wei, and his other friends. Wang Teng initially wanted to reject his offer, but he couldn't resist Suji's nagging. He felt that Suji would keep pestering him until he agreed. Hence, he accepted the invitation helplessly. They had been friends for so many years, so it wouldn't be good to make Suji lose face. Honestly, he wasn't willing to attend a gathering. He had been to many such parties in his past life. The people attending were all rich second generations or children of officials. Everyone gathered to eat, drink, play, and keep up their friendships. Once they forged a good relationship, they could go out more in the future. If anyone had trouble, they could help one another out. But, in his past life, when his family went downhill, these people dodged as far away as possible. No one was really willing to help him. At that time, he understood. These were all fair-weather friends. They appeared like brothers on the surface, helping you when you have small or unimportant problems. Once you were in a true dilemma, you couldn't rely on them at all. Forget it. I'll just go there to have some good food and drinks, Wang Teng consoled himself. He placed the sword and blade he was holding back into the weapons room. Then, he returned home to tidy up and changed his clothes. He prepared to meet Suji and his friends first. "Mom, I won't be coming home for dinner. I'm going to a gathering of our circle with Suji and some other friends," Wang Teng told Li Xiaomei. "Go ahead. It's good to go out and make some friends. You practice martial arts every day. I'm worried that you will get addicted to martial arts and won't find a girlfriend in the future." The moment he heard Li Xiaomei mention his girlfriend, Wang Teng felt his head spinning. Judging from his mother's expression, he felt that she planned to continue this topic forever. Thus, he immediately ran away in fright. This is so scary. When Wang Teng drove his car, he still had lingering fears. 20 minutes later, he met Suji and his friends at the toll station heading to Mount Baoan. This gathering was being held inside a mountain villa on Mount Baoan. It was said that the host's family was influential, and he had massive sway over the younger generation. This mountain villa was his personal property. He had provided it for their gathering today. The four of them drove 2 cars in. Bai Wei was sitting in Wang Teng's car as she briefly explained the situation to him. She wasn't clear about the details either. Suji drove his car in front of them to lead the way. Yu Hao was sitting in his car, feeling a little bitter. At first, he wanted to sit with Bai Wei so that they could have a conversation along the journey. Yet, before he could open his mouth, Bai Wei had already run to Wang Teng's car. Wang Teng's sports car could only fit 2 people. In the end, Yu Hao had to throw his thoughts away. Mount Baoan was at the outskirts of Donghai City. If they took the highway, they would reach in half an hour. There were road signs placed at regular intervals. They followed them and left the highway, driving up the hill along a cement road. After years of development, there were many mountain villas and entertainment facilities built on Mount Baoan. A broad road was constructed to make it more convenient for travelers. The road's construction was made possible because Mount Baoan wasn't high. If it was too high, the road wouldn't reach the top. Lush forests lined the sides of the road and painted beautiful scenery. Mixed with the occasional chirping of birds, the sound of a flowing stream floated into their ears. It was invigorating and refreshing and lightened up people's moods. Chapter 24, Zhou Baiyun. Chapter 24, Zhou Baiyun. Ever since the dimensional rifts appeared, the living creatures on Earth went through tremendous changes. The trees turned huge and luscious, the animals became enormous, and the unique characteristics of each species were enhanced. Those that were ferocious became more ferocious, while stupids turned even more stupid. In the wilderness, there were giant eagles with a wingspan of 100 meters soaring in the sky. There were lions the size of lorries occupying the grasslands. There were also fierce tigers with wings roaring in the forest. Of course, in the cities, there were still stupid huskies devoted to their great course of dismantling homes. There were also cute cats dedicated to acting cute. The mutated star beasts were blocked by martial warriors outside the city. In the city, its citizens continued to get along happily with the animals. Mount Baoan wasn't part of the wilderness. It was still within the vicinity of the city. The trees were lush and green, and they were all more than 10 meters tall. It was a magnificent scene. Occasionally, colorful birds would fly out of the forest and stop at the side of the road, ignoring the cars going back and forth. In the past, these birds were just ordinary wild birds. Yet, now, their feathers were bright and colorful, their eyes were beautiful, and their posture was elegant. They could honestly be compared to the precious and rare birds in the past. However, in this era, they were just wild birds that could be seen all the time in the mountains. A white rabbit popped its head out from the bushes, peeking around with its ruby-like eyes. Its fur was smooth and glossy, and its long ears were folded back. Little White Rabbit. What a cute little white rabbit! Bai Wei exclaimed in surprise. Wang Teng glanced at the rabbit from the corner of his eyes while driving his car. The corners of his lips twitched uncontrollably. This little white rabbit isn't little at all. The car drove away quickly. The little white rabbit also disappeared into the bushes, leaving Bai Wei extremely disappointed. The two cars soon reached the middle of the mountain. A villa was built against the mountain wall, with a verdant landscape as the backdrop. It merged with nature, making it high-class but not extravagant. After parking their cars, Wang Teng and his friends walked towards the villa. A line of attendants was waiting to welcome the guests at the door. They walked into the villa and passed through a corridor, which opened into a huge hall. There were already many people happily interacting inside. Someone came forward and welcomed them when he saw the group. The person smiled and said, "Elder cousin, you came. Aren't you going to introduce your friends to me?" "Sun Jian, my younger cousin. This is my elder brother, Wang Teng. These two are my best friends too, Yu Hao and Bai Wei." Suji gave a mutual introduction. Sun Jian was a little surprised when he heard Suji calling Wang Teng his elder brother. They were cousins and were quite close to each other. Hence, he had some understanding of Suji's personality, indifferent and nonchalant. Yet, he called Wang Teng his elder brother. This meant that he respected the guy from the bottom of his heart. "Suji is my elder cousin. Since he calls you elder brother, I will call you brother too," Sun Jian smiled and said to Wang Teng. As the saying went, one can't be angry at a smiling person. Wang Teng also smiled in return and replied, "Each to his own. We are peers. There's no need to address each other formally as an elder brother. You can just call my name." Sun Jian turned to Yu Hao and Bai Wei and chatted with them happily for a while. He took care of everyone and left no one unattended. With Sun Jian bringing them around, Suji and his friends quickly got familiar with the rest of the people. Wang Teng didn't like to socialize that much, but since he was here, he would respect other people when they came to speak to him. He would smile and reply to them. As a rich second generation, he had never especially learned such a skill. However, he had witnessed situations like these before, so he knew how to handle it. Also, he wasn't a lunkhead who didn't know anything and frowned upon everything. He still had to do the superficial greetings. Among them, the most popular person was actually Bai Wei. This young lady was pretty and lovely. When she stood with the other ladies, other young men kept turning their heads to look at her. Yu Hao felt unhappy when he saw this. A while later, more people joined the party, around 20 in total. They were all either rich second generations or the children of officials. Wang Teng couldn't help but exclaim over how influential the host of this gathering was. "Jian, who is the host of this gathering? Give me some information," Suji asked Sun Jian softly. "Zhou Baiun." Sun Jian chuckled before saying the name. "Zhou Baiun?" Suji was astounded. "That Zhou family?" "Yes, it's the Zhou family you are thinking of," Sun Jian nodded and replied. "Then, who is this Zhou Baiun?" Suji was puzzled, almost bursting with curiosity. "The third child of the Zhou family. She stayed overseas in the past and just came back recently," Sun Jian said. "She isn't leaving anymore." Suji immediately understood the situation. "That's right, she's not leaving anymore. I'm afraid that there might be a fierce battle within the Zhou family in the future." Sun Jian gave a meaningful smile. Bai Wei and Yu Hao were eavesdropping on their conversation. As rich second generations, they were naturally able to imagine future events. Wang Teng remained indifferent, though. This had nothing to do with him. No matter what happened, he wouldn't participate in it. Also, as long as he became a martial warrior, family feuds would be just a joke to him. "She's here!" someone suddenly shouted. Footsteps were heard outside the hall. Then, 4 people walked in from outside. "I'm sorry. I went to fetch a friend along the way. I apologize for letting everyone wait for such a long time." The lady in the middle of the 4 people scanned the crowd as she spoke. This lady seemed to be in her early 20s. She was tall and slender and could get 90 points for her beauty. However, she had a proud and domineering aura around her. She lifted her chin slightly and revealed her long slender neck, like an arrogant white swan. "You're not too late. We just arrived too." Everyone showed respect towards her and chimed in. "Why is Li Rongcheng here too?" Suji leaned towards Wang Teng and frowned as he asked. "Didn't Miss Zhou say that he's her friend?" Yu Hao pouted. "Li Rongcheng has a grudge with us. Will he create difficulties for us by talking bad about us in front of Zhou Baiun?" Bai Wei asked. "If he dares to talk behind our backs, Wang Teng will beat him to death. I didn't see him in school for the past few days. He must be dodging brother Wang Teng," Suji said with contempt. "All right, this is their home ground. Don't talk so much," Wang Teng said. Zhou Baiun had a strong background and was skilled with people. As she interacted with all the rich second generations and children of government officials, people quickly forgot their unhappiness about her late arrival. As for Li Rongcheng, he accompanied her all the time. It was obvious that Zhou Baiun regarded him as an important person. Whether they were real friends or not, no one would know. After some time, Zhou Baiun held a glass of red wine and walked towards Wang Teng and his friends. "You seem a little unfamiliar. May I know from which family talented youths like you come from?" As the saying went, respect other people and you would naturally get respected. The moment the third princess of the Zhou family opened her mouth, she gave high respect to Wang Teng and his friends. Talented youths? If students like Wang Teng, who didn't study well, were considered talented youths, they were dragging the standard for talented youths down to the abyss. Li Rongcheng's expression changed when he saw Wang Teng. Yuan Zhenghua was following Li Rongcheng, and his expression also followed his example. Their expression seemed to be carved out of the same mold. Before Sun Jian could introduce them, Zhou Baiun had already noticed the strange atmosphere between them. She smiled and asked, "Do you know each other?" "Of course. How can we not know each other? We are old classmates. We are old friends." Suji sniggered. "Young Master Li, you look better recently." Wang Teng greeted Li Rongcheng casually since they knew each other. However, Li Rongcheng's expression worsened. Zhou Baiun didn't know what was happening, so the smile on her face turned slightly awkward. Sun Jian hurriedly introduced Wang Teng and his friends to her. Chapter 25, Hunting Ground. Chapter 25, Hunting Ground. "Oh, so it's the 5th young master of the Wang family," Zhou Baiun smiled as she said. Her emotions a moment ago disappeared in an instant. Before coming here, she had done her homework on all the big and small prominent families in Donghai City. Thus, after Sun Jian introduced these people to her, their identities immediately flashed through her mind. After a simple conversation, she excused herself and went to find other people. When she was a distance away, Suji lowered his voice and whispered, "Our families are probably not up to Zhou Baiun's standard." Although Zhou Baiun didn't portray her emotions, they could feel the difference in her attitude. She wasn't as hospitable to them as she was to the others. Sun Jian was a little unhappy. He was the one who invited Suji and his friends, so Zhou Baiun's attitude made him feel humiliated. Wang Teng patted his shoulder. "Don't mind her. We came here today purely to have fun and enjoy some good food. Making friends is secondary. Jian, don't think too much." It feels good to eat and play for free the entire day. Suji chuckled. The other three people instantly felt better after his consolation. Hey, how did Li Rongcheng manage to get to know Zhou Baiun? By right, the Li family isn't strong enough to befriend the Zhou family, Bai Wei suddenly asked. I heard that Zhou Baiun is looking for martial disciples, especially advanced stage martial disciples with the hope of becoming martial warriors, Sun Jian said. That makes sense. When Li Rongcheng became an advanced stage martial disciple, the Li family had announced it to everyone. They probably wanted everyone to know that there was a genius in their Li family who would become a martial warrior in the future. Yu Hao joined the discussion. It isn't easy to become a martial warrior. Advanced stage martial disciples aren't rare, but only a small percentage of them can become martial warriors. Within 1,000 advanced stage martial disciples, there might not be even one who can take that step. The Li family might not be able to help Li Rongcheng become a martial warrior even if they throw all their resources at him, Suji said with contempt. He was incredibly irritated. But, this doesn't prevent Zhou Baiun from drawing him to her side, Bai Wei mocked. Throw the net and you will get more fishes. Li Rongcheng is probably only one of the fishes. However, if Zhou Baiun knows brother Wang Teng's ability haha. Suji gave an evil smile. This has nothing to do with me. No matter how well she treats me, I won't interfere in her affairs, Wang Teng shook his head and replied. A thought shot through Sun Jian's mind as he listened to their conversation and recalled Li Rongcheng's expression a moment ago. After some wild guesses, he realized something, and a glint appeared in his eyes. But, he didn't express his emotions. He maintained the same attitude and slowly integrated himself into Wang Teng's circle. Yu Hao and Bai Wei liked Sun Jian's personality. Though Wang Teng knew his intentions, he didn't say anything. Besides, he was Suji's cousin. This additional relationship naturally made it easier for them to accept him. Hence, they had a fun time chatting with one another. Afternoon. It was lunchtime. Plates of exquisite dishes were placed on the table. The fragrance of the food wafted into everyone's nose and made them salivate. This is Star Beast dishes. Yu Hao said in a soft voice. He had seen these dishes before. Zhou Baiun must have spent a fortune on this gathering. These Star Beast dishes are quite expensive, Suji commented. While everyone sat around the table, some guests inched towards Zhou Baiun's side. Within a few seconds, the front part of the table was fully occupied. The entire dining table was long and rectangular. In the end, Wang Teng and his friends could only sit at the end of the table. They seemed a little asocial. Very soon, everyone started eating. Wang Teng took a piece of meat and placed it in his mouth. Once his tongue touched the meat, he immediately noticed that the energy contained inside wasn't thick. These are probably wild beasts on the earth that underwent small mutations. He formed his conclusion. It made sense. Most of the people here were just normal human beings. How could they handle the energy contained in the meat of real star beasts? Wang Teng scanned through the guests briefly and saw that many rich second generations and children of officials had pale complexions. They looked so weak that it felt as though they could drop dead at any moment. To these people, eating a small amount of star beast meat could benefit their health. However, if they overate, it was as good as poison. They could lose their lives. Zhou Baiun understood this, so she had prepared these ingredients. Of course, most people didn't know this. Wild beasts that underwent minor mutations were equivalent to the rare game meat wealthy people ate in Wang Teng's past life. Usually, there was little chance of tasting them. Also, these ingredients were cooked by advanced stage chefs. They were outstanding in color, flavor, and taste. At the same time, they were nourishing to the body. Everyone had a happy time eating. They all felt that Zhou Baiun was very considerate. This meal lasted for more than an hour. After filling up their stomachs, Zhou Baiun stood up and said, There are many entertainment spots on Mount Bowen. In the afternoon, everyone can get some rest. We will go out to have some fun at 2:30 p.m. Since we have already come here, we should have a good time. They all agreed with her. There were many rooms in the villa, so the guests went to look for their rooms. Those wanting to rest excused themselves, while the remaining gathered together and chatted with one another. Suji, Bai Wei, and Yu Hao didn't have Wang Teng's energy. They decided to rest for some time. Ever since Wang Teng started practicing martial arts, he would consciously ensure that his body was in its best state all the time. Since there was nothing for him to do now, he decided to get a short nap. 2:30 p.m. Everyone left their rooms and gathered in the hall. Under Zhou Baiyun's lead, they went into the mountain. There were indeed many entertainment spots in the mountain, like open-air swimming pools where one could play with water guns under the hot sun. They could also enjoy the sight of pretty ladies in bikinis along the way. Mind you, there were many beautiful ladies among the wealthy young generations. Not only that, there was a special area cordoned off as a hunting ground on Mount Bowen. Visitors to the mountain could form teams and hunt there. It was an exciting experience. Men loved guns, so this kind of hunting game would satisfy their desires to a large extent. So, there were indeed many entertainment venues, and it would be unwise to go through them one by one. The group soon reached their destination and looked at the open-air swimming pool in front of them. It was situated below a small waterfall. There were also many entertainments built around the swimming pool. Many people felt like taking off their clothes and jumping into the cool water. Whoa! Apparently, some people were already doing this. A man howled like a wolf and jumped into the swimming pool without even taking off his clothes. Water splashed everywhere. Lin Hao, are you crazy? His friends started laughing and teasing him. Lin Hao popped his head out of the pool and wiped the water off his face. He laughed heartily and said, "This feels so good. Hurry up and come down if you want to play. Why are you dilly-dallying? You are indeed bold and unrestrained, just like your name." In Chinese, Hao means bold and unstrained. Zhou Baiyun praised him. Lin Hao laughed loudly again. What an idiot, Suji scolded him softly with a smile. He was speechless. The hunting ground is at the side. You can go there if you want. All you have to do is to register with the staff. You can hunt some game for us to barbecue at night. I have prepared a secret gift for the person who catches the most prey. Zhou Baiyun pointed at an entrance-looking spot on the left and did some explanation. At the end, she warned everyone. However, I have to remind you that there are some aggressive wild beasts inside. Please ensure your own safety. It will be better to form a group. You can take care of each other that way. If you act alone, it will be very dangerous. Chapter 26, Gun Skill. Chapter 26, Gun Skill. The second Zhou Baiyun finished speaking, people started heading over to the hunting ground after informing their friends. Wang Teng was interested too. Before joining them, he called out his attributes panel. Enlightenment, 82. Physique, 167. Strength, 2888. Speed, 1033. Battle techniques, basic fist skill, mastery, basic footwork, mastery, basic sword skill, mastery, basic blade skill, mastery, gun skill, small achievement. Over the past few days, his attribute points had been steadily increasing, and he had also added gun skill to his arsenal. It was already at the small achievement stage too. There were a lot of things related to gun knowledge in Wang Teng's mind. He felt that his aim had gotten accurate, and his gaze had become slightly sharp. He had picked up the gun skill 2 days ago when he killed the 5 robbers. These robbers were all martial disciples, and they only had the very basic fist skill and footwork, so the attributes they could provide were limited. However, they had guns to make up for their lack of skills. They had dropped quite a lot of gun skill attributes. The attributes from the 5 robbers pushed Wang Teng's gun skill to the small achievement stage. Undoubtedly, killing someone would make them drop the most attributes. It was frightening just thinking about it. Besides attributes, Wang Teng also had another gain that day: rune gun. Each of the 5 robbers had 1 rune gun. However, the leader of the robbers had another one hidden on his body. After the hostages ran out of the office building, based on the principle of not wasting any chances, Wang Teng searched the corpses. This is just a good habit I picked up from playing games. Fortunately, the surveillance cameras were broken by professional robbers, so it provided the most convenient opportunity for Wang Teng. This was why Wang Teng had a weapon hidden on his body. After he picked up the gun skill attributes, he hadn't had the chance to test it out. Thus, when he heard that guns could be used in the hunting ground, excitement crept up in his heart. "Brother Wang Teng, shall we have some fun?" Suji asked with glistening eyes. Yu Hao and Sun Jian seemed excited too. Wang Teng smiled in his heart. It looked like everyone had the same thought. "Little Wei, are you going?" Wang Teng looked at Bai Wei and asked. "No. You guys play with the real guns, and I will play with my small water guns." Bai Wei waved the water gun that had suddenly appeared in her hand. Sure. As long as you are happy." The corners of Wang Teng's eyes jumped a little. He said to Suji and the other 2 young men, "Let's go." Bai Wei joined the water gun battle team with a few other young ladies. Wang Teng and his friends came to the entrance of the hunting ground. After finishing their registration at the staff counter and collecting their guns, they entered the hunting ground. The guns provided by the staff were also rune guns. However, their power couldn't be compared to the guns the robbers used. Although they were both rune guns, there was a difference in their power. More powerful rune guns were able to kill martial warriors, while weaker ones could only be used to kill the lowest level mutated wild beasts. Based on the power of the guns, rune guns could be classified from 1 star to 9 star. The hunting guns they had weren't even considered 1-star guns. But, when Suji and his friends touched the guns, they felt they were caressing some precious treasure. Amid mixed feelings, the group walked into the hunting ground. The entire hunting ground was surrounded by metal barbed wires, which were enhanced by runes. Hence, its defense ability was better than regular metal wires. The light in the hunting ground was a little dim. Trees shot up from the ground, and their dense crowns blocked the sunlight. The ground was filled with decomposed leaves and branches piled up over the years. When you stepped on them, they kept cracking. "Isn't there any special staff assigned to clean the hunting ground normally?" Suji complained. "Cleaning is unnecessary. Many people are attracted by the atmosphere here. If there are too many signs of human intervention, it won't have this feeling anymore," Sun Jian explained. Suji thought for a moment and nodded. "Makes sense." Yu Hao rolled his eyes. He had to admit that Suji was a little idiotic and stupid sometimes. As they were chatting casually, a gunshot exploded beside their ears without any warning. They almost jumped on the spot in fright. "FK, brother Wang Teng, why did you fire?" Suji patted his chest and asked. Wang Teng raised his chin. Suji and the other 3 people looked in the direction he was pointing at. There was a huge gray rabbit. It was lying in the bushes, dead. "We're off to a flying start." Suji laughed loudly. Yu Hao and Sun Jian looked at Wang Teng in shock. They hadn't noticed when this rabbit appeared at all. Also, his firing was really accurate. 1 shot, 1 kill. After Suji picked up the rabbit, the group of young people continued walking into the depth of the hunting ground. The deeper parts were the real playground for wild animals. An hour passed in a blink of an eye. Suji and his friends were all carrying wild animals in their hands. The harvest seemed good. "There's movement in front." The second Wang Teng spoke, the other three people stopped in their tracks and raised their guns. They listened carefully and noticed a faint sound coming from the distance. They were already used to Wang Teng's keen senses, so they appeared nonchalant now. Each of them found a tree and hid behind it. "Hurry up and chase it. Don't let it run away," someone shouted in front. Suji exchanged glances with his companions. It looked like they had encountered another group of hunters. Just as they were preparing to give up, the bushes in front of them started shaking. Wang Teng and others stopped midway and saw an agile black shadow dashing out of the bushes. The person who shouted earlier had run over too. "It's them." Suji and his friends took a glance and exclaimed. It was Zhou Baiyun, Li Rongcheng, and their friends. Li Rongcheng was eager to perform in front of Zhou Baiyun, so he raised his gun and fired at his prey while sprinting. All three shots hit nothing. The black shadow dodged right and left. It was unimaginably agile. "Li Rongcheng, if you can't hit it, stop firing. You are wasting the bullets. More importantly, what if you hit us?" Suji shouted in a mocking tone. "FK, why are you here?" Li Rongcheng cursed, as if meeting them was unlucky. "Haha, this hunting ground doesn't belong to your family. If you can come, why can't we?" Suji rebutted. "Hurry up and stop it. It's going to escape." Before Li Rongcheng could say anything, Zhou Baiyun shouted from behind. "FK, brother Wang Teng, it's a white wolf. It's running towards you." Suji glanced at the animal and yelled in a strange tone. Wang Teng didn't want to fire. This wolf was Zhou Baiyun's prey. If he interfered with their tram hunting, grudges would naturally take root in their hearts. However, Li Rongcheng fired a few more shots and still couldn't hit it. "If anyone hits that wolf, I will fulfill one wish for him." Zhou Baiyun shouted when she saw that the white wolf was about to escape. Wang Teng looked at the white wolf dashing towards him and felt helpless. "Why do you have to run towards me? You are forcing me to act." "One shot." Wang Teng predicted the wolf's movement for dodging the bullet. He aimed his shot in its path and hit its abdomen with a single shot. The white wolf howled in agony and fell from the branches, landing on the ground with a thud. "Haha, you hit it?" Suji was happier than Wang Teng. He walked out from behind the tree and laughed at Li Rongcheng until Li Rongcheng's face turned green. "What good luck!" Li Rongcheng scolded. Yu Hao and Sun Jian also walked over. They gathered around the wolf and examined it, clicking their tongues in amazement at the same time. "This wolf's fur is so beautiful." Zhou Baiyun walked over and bent down to stroke the wolf's fur. She said delightfully, "Very good. This fur is perfect for making a scarf." Chapter 27, The Loud Sound Under the Night Sky. Chapter 27, The Loud Sound Under the Night Sky. Animals had started mutating after getting influenced by the Force. This white wolf's skin was just like silk. Not only was it pure white and beautiful, it felt extremely good to touch. Its thermal insulation effect was good too. Zhou Baiyun instantly fell in love with it. She passed the wolf to the young lady following her. Then, she got up and said to Wang Teng, "I didn't know that your gun skill was so good. Thank you for helping out just now. I meant what I said. You can make one request of me." After she finished, she gave a cheeky smile and added, "But, you can't go too far." Zhou Baiyun was proud and arrogant most of the time. But, mind you, when she put on a cheeky expression like this, the contrast made her attractive. She had probably noticed Wang Teng's ability, so her attitude towards him changed. "Humph, what a slap in the face. There's no need to thank me. It's nothing. Don't mention it." Wang Teng smiled. His indifferent expression caused Li Rongcheng to go berserk as he screamed in his heart. "He's acting. This man must be feigning calm. Let's go." Wang Teng turned and waved at Suji and his other friends. Then, He walked towards the direction of the hunting grounds entrance. He was tired of hunting. The praise here didn't even require him to release one-third of his gun skill potential. Suji didn't hesitate. After pointing his middle finger at Li Rongcheng, he followed Wang Teng out. Zhou Baiun felt a little dissatisfied with the rejection. Sun Jian said to Zhou Baiun, "Sister Zhou, we are all tired from hunting. We will be going back now. Please continue to have fun." Zhou Baiun was displeased at Wang Teng for being disrespectful to her. However, she couldn't display her emotions openly, so she just nodded with a calm expression. "Wait for me." Yu Hao couldn't bear to part with the gun in his hand. But, there was no point in continuing if he was the only one left, so he jogged and caught up with the rest. The four of them returned to the entrance and handed their guns to the staff. There were many beach chairs placed around the open-air swimming pool. The sunlight filtered through the trees, and the mountain spring in front of them shimmered under the sun. Wang Teng and his friends found 4 empty beach chairs and laid on them. Their hands didn't rest, though, as they enjoyed some iced fruits, snacks, and drinks. The group also admired the beauties in the swimming pool. "Tisk, what a good life." Suji and Sun Jian chuckled like ducks. Yu Hao couldn't help but glance at them a few times. Then, he threw a look of contempt before turning to look at Bai Wei with a sincere expression. "It's good to be young. Everyone is full of vitality." Wang Teng wore a pair of sunglasses and held a cigarette in his mouth. While taking a puff of his cigarette, he lamented like an old man. This young man was acting again. This time, he was pretending in front of nobody. Suji suddenly leaned over and asked with a secretive look on his face, "Brother Wang Teng, who do you like?" "Me." Suji nodded. Wang Teng glanced at the swimming pool before replying, "What's there to say? I'll choose the one with the best figure." "Shameless." The three of them exclaimed simultaneously. Wang Teng laughed loudly in return. When he turned to look at the beauties again, a sudden scene caused him to squint. He picked up a small pebble on the ground and flicked it out with his fingers. The pebble cut through the air and hit a young man's hand. This guy was secretly trying to molest a young lady. The strength and accuracy were right on point. Perfect. "Ah!" The young man screamed in pain. He immediately retracted his hand, as though he was pricked by needles. "What's the matter?" Bai Wei turned around and looked at the young man curiously. "Oh, nothing, nothing. I think I got bitten by something. It frightened me." He laughed awkwardly as he placed his hand behind his back, leaving no traces of his crime. Bai Wei ignored him and continued playing water guns with the other young ladies. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The young man looked at the back of his hand. It was swollen. It hurt so much that he gasped in pain. What happened just now? He scanned his surroundings in confusion. Unfortunately, he didn't see anything. Wang Teng thought that after this lesson, the young man would restrain himself. But, more than 10 minutes later, the young fellow sneaked behind Bai Wei and lifted his hand again in an attempt to grope her. Wang Teng frowned. Isn't he done? He picked up a bigger pebble and flicked it out once again. The stone flew towards the young man with a sharp gust of wind. This time, it didn't hit the back of his hand. Instead, it was aimed directly at the bottom part of his body. Slap! A crisp sound shook the hearts of men. Ouch! Afterward, another howl of pain was heard. The earth-shattering scream made everyone jump in fright. The young man's face turned distorted as he clutched the lower part of his body. He was crumpled up like a huge shrimp. What happened? Everyone turned to look at him. His friends went forward and showed some concern. The young man didn't dare to tell the truth. He waved his hand fervently and took a long time to calm down. Finally, he replied in a hoarse voice, "I'm fine. I'm fine. I think something bit me." Bai Wei gave him a puzzled look when she heard his familiar reply. Both times, this person was standing behind her. Both times, he screamed for no reason and explained that he got bitten by something. She wasn't stupid. Bai Wei had a hunch and raised her head. Her gaze coincidentally landed on Wang Teng, who was on the shore. Wang Teng raised his eyebrows and gave her a sign. Bai Wei was enlightened and got disgusted by the young man. After this issue, she didn't have the mood to enjoy anymore. She stepped out of the swimming pool and came beside Wang Teng and her friends. She found an empty bench and sat on it. Then, she chatted with them casually while having some drinks. Bai Wei didn't mention what happened just now at all. Time passed quickly. Soon, the sky turned dark, and everyone started building a campfire. Before this, Zhou Baiyun had already ordered people to clean the preys that were caught. Currently, plates and plates of fresh game meat were dished out. Those that knew how to barbecue started showing their capabilities. They needed to perform well in front of the beauties. The meal consisted of barbecued meat and vegetables. Everyone's lips were covered with oil from the food, but they didn't find it greasy. The atmosphere got livelier as they paired their food with beer. The young men and ladies were huddled in small groups, singing and playing together as though they had known each other for a long time. As they had fun, time seeped away slowly. Around 9 p.m., everyone started to feel tired after a whole day of fun. They prepared to go back. Zhou Baiyun stood up and clapped her hands to gather everyone's attention. She was planning to say a few polite words before parting ways. Everyone respected her and looked at her quietly. Zhou Baiyun opened her mouth. A loud explosion suddenly came from the forest in the distance. Even though it was far away, they still felt the ground vibrating a little. All of them were flabbergasted. They looked in the direction where the sound came from. It was pitch black, and nothing could be seen clearly. Chapter 28, Martial Warriors Massacre. Chapter 28, Martial Warriors Massacre. The crowd exchanged glances with one another. No one knew what was happening in the forest. Li Rongcheng stepped out at this moment and said to Zhou Baiyun, "I will go and take a look." "All right. Be careful," Zhou Baiyun nodded and replied. Li Rongcheng smiled. He ran into the forest in front and disappeared into the darkness. Li Rongcheng is an advanced stage martial disciple, right? In a situation like this, only people who practiced martial arts are useful, a rich second generation said in envy. Wang Teng looked at the pitch-black night sky. He hesitated for a moment before saying to Suji and his friends, "Wait here. Don't run around. I will go and take a look." "Brother Wang Teng, be careful," Bai Wei said worriedly. He stepped on the ground, and his body shot up abruptly. Tapping his toes on the branches lightly, Wang Teng flew onto the crown of a massive tree like a bird. Everyone exclaimed in surprise. They didn't expect the ordinary-looking Wang Teng to be a martial disciple too. Also, looking at his ability, he wasn't weaker than Li Rongcheng. Indeed, he was an advanced stage martial disciple. Furthermore, judging from his skill, he was more powerful than Li Rongcheng. A glimpse flashed past Zhou Baiyun's eyes as she stared at the figure standing on the crown of the huge tree. Wang Teng gazed into the distance and identified the direction. He then exerted force on his legs and unleashed his monstrous strength within a split second. When he tapped his toes on the crown, the entire thing exploded, and wood splinters and leaves scattered down from the sky. Wang Teng's figure had already shot out like an arrow released from the bow. He slashed through the night sky and used the numerous trees to move quickly through the forest in mid-air. The bunch of rich second generations and children of officials were dazzled by Wang Teng. Was this the true ability of an advanced stage martial disciple? If Li Rongcheng saw this scene, he would denounce Wang Teng for acting in public again. To hell with advanced stage martial disciples. This wasn't martial arts. Which advanced stage martial disciple had his kind of ability? If all the advanced stage martial disciples were as powerful as him, the city would be filled with martial disciples jumping on roofs and climbing up walls. Not long after Wang Teng left, Li Rongcheng came back. "Did you discover anything?" Zhou Baiyun walked forward and asked. Li Rongcheng shook his head. The sound came from somewhere extremely far away. "I've checked all the areas in the vicinity. I didn't notice anything unusual." The moment he finished speaking, another loud explosion shook the eardrums of the crowd. The atmosphere turned awkward for a second. Li Rongcheng felt embarrassed. Suji and his friends snorted without any qualms. They didn't show any intention of hiding their peals of laughter. It made Li Rongcheng even more furious. "What are you laughing at? Hey, where is Wang Teng?" He suddenly noticed that Wang Teng had disappeared. "After you left, Wang Teng went to take a look," Zhou Baiyun said. Li Rongcheng's expression turned uglier. "Why is this fellow interfering with everything? Let's wait for a while longer. Maybe Wang Teng will bring some information back," one of the rich second generation suggested. "All right, let's wait for a while." Zhou Baiyun nodded. Wang Teng flew through the forest. He would tap his feet on the crowns of the trees every time before leaping forward. Honestly, ordinary advanced stage martial disciples weren't as powerful as him. The crown of a tree was delicate. If you exerted too much force, you would fall. Conversely, if your strength wasn't enough, you wouldn't be able to gain the momentum to leap forward. Normal advanced stage martial disciples didn't have his strength nor his outstanding body control. Hence, they couldn't astonish the crowd with a dazzling performance like Wang Teng. After some time, Wang Teng stopped. He jumped down from the tree and landed on the ground lightly. "It should be around here." Wang Teng scanned the darkness around him. He had noticed something amiss. There was a fight here a moment ago. The explosion was so loud. Could it be martial warriors? Wang Teng had a sudden thought, scaring himself. If it was really martial warriors, it's better for me to stay here. Just as Wang Teng wisely decided to retreat, he hesitated in his tracks. But, martial warriors will drop attribute bubbles when they fight, right? What if there's something I need? He froze on the spot. In his mind, the voice on the right was warning him that curiosity killed the cat. But, the voice on the left was enticing him. Great success came with great risk. Why don't I take a look first? If the situation isn't right, I will run away immediately. In the end, Wang Teng convinced himself and carefully explored the forest. He was unusually nervous. He walked forward for another 10 meters. Fallen trees could be seen all around him. The tree branches were shattered with burnt marks on them. There were also a few holes on the ground. Half of the deep holes' edges were burnt, while the other half was covered with ice shards. This Wang Teng opened his mouth. He was astounded. Was this the power of a martial warrior? He took a few steps forward, and his gaze froze. Huh! There was a figure lying on the ground. It seemed to be dead. A few attribute bubbles were floating beside the figure. Wang Teng went wild with joy. However, just as the feeling appeared in his heart, he felt a sense of fear surging throughout his body. It completely drowned his happiness. In an instant, Wang Teng's head turned numb, and goosebumps started appearing on his body. He felt a sharp pain somewhere on his back. Without thinking, Wang Teng executed his mastery stage footwork to its maximum speed. He didn't have the time to dodge to the side, so he could only tilt his body slightly. Slash! The glint from a sword cut through the air beside Wang Teng's body. His clothes were cut open, and his skin got pierced. A dash of fresh blood splattered everywhere. Fortunately, it was only an external injury. However, Wang Teng didn't dare to relax at all. The danger was still lingering closely around him. Almost at the same time when he evaded the attack, he shook his hand, and a small-sized rune gun appeared in his hand. He fired multiple shots in the direction where the glint of the sword came from. Bang, 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 bang. Wang Teng only stopped shooting after he emptied the gun. He then dashed behind a tree and used it as cover. Wang Teng was panting as his heart threatened to jump out of his chest. He could feel death caressing his back just now. Who is it? Who on earth is it? Why does he want to kill me? The forest was eerily quiet. Besides the leaves rustling in the wind, no other sounds could be heard. Wang Teng waited for a few minutes before he stuck his head out slightly and looked in the direction where the sword had come from. A black figure was leaning against a tree without moving. There were a few bubbles floating beside this figure. The faint glow from the bubbles allowed Wang Teng to barely make out the figure. He seemed to be dead. Did I kill him? Could it be that he isn't a martial warrior? Wang Teng was filled with curiosity. In the end, he couldn't hold it in and walked over. However, he still had basic vigilance. Wang Teng shifted his energy to his fists and got prepared to fight at any moment. However, when he neared the figure, he discovered that the person was really dead. There was one headshot and a few more shots at his organs. If this person wasn't dead, he wasn't human. Phew. Wang Teng instantly heaved a sigh of relief. He touched his waist before looking at his hand. It was covered with blood. I'm so lucky. I almost died. Is the martial warrior world really so dangerous? Do they kill people whenever they want? Wang Teng was puzzled as he studied the corpse's face. This person didn't die in peace. There were still remnants of disbelief and the fear of imminent death on his face. Maybe he didn't expect to die in my hands. Wang Teng's gaze landed on the bubbles dropped beside this person. He picked them up. Red Flame Scripture. Beginner Stage Fire Talent. Fire Force *2. Chapter 29, 1-star Soldier Level Martial Warrior. Chapter 29, 1-star Soldier Level Martial Warrior. Fire Kirin Sword Skill *10. Spirit *0.1. Wang Teng collected all 5 bubbles, and in that instant, his entire body underwent a tremendous change. When Spirit *0.1 integrated into his body, Wang Teng's mind became clear. The feeling only lasted for a short moment, though, and disappeared in a split second. At the same time, his body underwent some unexplainable changes. When he closed his eyes before, it was pitch black. But, now, he was able to feel numerous fiery red tiny particles floating above the earth. They were like little fairies with life. Fire Force. This was the Fire Force. After Wang Teng's body completed its transformation, the Fire Force hovering around him seemed to have discovered an amusement park. They happily flew towards him and entered his body through the various pores on his skin. However, since they didn't receive any guidance, they only knew how to barge around in his body. Fortunately, a memory that appeared in thin air managed to help him. Red Flame Scripture Force Skill Scripture. In Wang Teng's mind, a virtual shadow started practicing the scripture. Wang Teng could clearly see the meridians on the shadow's body. They spread out from his limbs with his spine as the trunk, covering his entire body. The Fire Force immediately found their direction. The 2 attribute points of the Fire Force he just collected were the most obedient. They acted as leaders and commanded the other small force attributes to line up as they marched into Wang Teng's meridians. Finally, they followed the spine and congregated at its lowest part. A red light flashed brightly. A wave of heat exploded from the bottom of his spine and spread through Wang Teng's entire body. The injury he suffered before started healing rapidly as the heat subsided, all the way until it completely healed. Then, the ball of heat shot out of the crown of his head like a balloon of steam. As it slowly dissipated, the red light at the bottom of his spine also subsided. Everything soon died down. At the other side of his mind, another figure was holding a battle sword and practicing. The power of fire was wrapped around the battle sword, and its strength was formidable. Fire Kirin Sword Skill Force Battle Technique. After the scene disappeared, Wang Teng opened his eyes. He suppressed the happiness in his heart and looked at his attributes panel. Wang Teng was shocked by what he saw. His attributes panel had undergone a transformation. Enlightenment, 83. Spirit 12.1. Talent, beginner stage fire talent, 10/300. Force, 6/100 fire, 1-star soldier level martial warrior. Scripture, red flame scripture, foundation 1/100. Battle techniques, basic battle techniques, mastery for fist, sword, blade, footwork, gun skill, small achievement, fire Kirin sword skill, foundation 10/100. Overall battle power, 132, the final decision belongs to the system, turned A. What is this? Wang Teng stared at the totally different attributes panel, especially at the force row. He couldn't shift his gaze away anymore. 1-star soldier level. I've become a martial warrior. Wang Teng clenched his fist and took many deep breaths before he forcefully calmed himself down. So this person was indeed a martial warrior. I actually killed a martial warrior. He lowered his head and looked at the corpse of the martial warrior in front of him. He didn't know what emotions he should have. Sigh. In the end, he let out a deep breath. Suddenly, Wang Teng remembered that there was another person lying on the other side. The figure dropped a few attribute bubbles too. Wang Teng needed to pick them up quickly, or they would disappear. Fortunately, the scene just now felt really long, but only a few seconds had passed in real life. When Wang Teng came back to the person lying on the ground, the bubbles were turning transparent, but they hadn't disappeared completely. Beginner stage ice talent. Ice force *1. Deep ice scripture. Phantom ice fist *8. There were 4 attribute bubbles, with the spirit bubble missing. If Wang Teng was right, this fellow was a martial warrior too. As the attribute bubbles merged into Wang Teng's body, the same thing happened again. Wang Teng received the beginner stage ice talent, and his body became attractive to ice force. All the ice particles floating around him surged into his body. The force skill scripture, deep ice scripture, started demonstrating its uses. The figure in Wang Teng's mind was sitting down cross-legged. In real life, Wang Teng copied the figure's actions. He crossed his legs and sat down. He followed the deep ice scripture and guided the ice force around his body through his meridians. The cold and icy feeling caused him to shiver. A thin layer of frost appeared on the ground around him. Wang Teng didn't notice it, though. He commanded the ice force and congregated them at the lowest part of his spine. The flow of ice force into the spine aroused the fire force particles that had stationed themselves there not long ago. These two elements were naturally incompatible. Once they met, one must disappear. They would never allow the other element to exist in their vicinity. However, just as the two forces were all set for a showdown and confrontation was imminent, a profound and mysterious energy appeared in between these two forces. This energy allowed the ice force and the fire force to calm down. The two forces slowly twirled and finally became circles, maintaining a stabilized equilibrium. At the same time, information about the Phantom Ice Fist successfully merged with Wang Teng's memory. He had received another force battle technique. A few minutes later, Wang Teng let out a long sigh and opened his eyes. That was dangerous. Ice and fire are incompatible. They almost exploded in my body. That almost scared me to death. Wang Teng still had lingering fears. He felt that after going home, he must read up on martial warriors. If not, he might make another common-sense mistake again and kill himself without knowing how he died. Speaking of this, did that energy come from the ultimate boss, the system? Wang Teng pondered over this question for some time, but he couldn't think of another explanation. It was most likely that the system had helped him. After all, he didn't have a magical ring, so he knew that there wouldn't be an old man appearing suddenly to save him from the verge of death. he wouldn't have the chance to tear up and call the old man his master. What a touching scene. It moved heaven and earth and touched everyone's heart. Wang Teng stood up and patted the dried leaves off his body. At that moment, he noticed that the ground around him had a layer of frost on it. Wang Teng was stunned. Force is really amazing. Wang Teng exclaimed. He looked at the corpses of the martial warriors and contemplated. Well, let's search the corpses. He looked through the pockets. Besides a cell phone and one steel bar, there was nothing else. But, the purple-black gloves on his hand caught Wang Teng's attention. This is good stuff. I'll keep it and examine it when I go home. He ran to the other fire element martial warrior and searched through his pockets too. An iPhone 8. A Zippo lighter. This is good. I'll keep it. There was also a pack of squashed cigarettes in his pockets. It looked like this man was a smoker. Wang Teng kept it without any qualms. Hey, this sword is not bad. Wang Teng pried open the corpse's fingers and sized up the long sword with bright red runes on it. He took possession of it immediately. Please don't blame me. Take nothing away at death. You can view it as a form of contribution to society, Wang Teng muttered. Chapter 30, After a Great Harvest, How Can You Forget to Destroy? Chapter 30, After a Great Harvest, How Can You Forget to Destroy? After searching through the corpses and taking everything he could, Wang Teng turned around to leave. He had already left the group for a long time. If he didn't go back soon, Suji and his friends might come and look for him. If they saw this scene, he had taken the possessions of these two martial warriors. If someone came to investigate, they would easily find him. Should he destroy the evidence by burning the corpses? It looked like this was the only thing he could do. Wang Teng placed the two corpses in a deep hole and activated the fire force in his body. A small flickering flame appeared on his finger. You created this deep hole. It just so happens that you can use it now. Cremation is popular in society nowadays. It's environmentally friendly and doesn't waste land mass. How do you recite that poem? Oh right, though turned to mud, they'd nurture flowers' growth next spring. After you die, you can still make contributions to this forest. How lovely is that? Wang Teng chattered away for a few seconds before he laid his eyes on the martial warrior who wanted to kill him. His emotions were complicated. Although you wanted to kill me, I didn't die and even killed you instead. This lighter and cigarette will be the compensation for the emotional distress you caused me. Now, I will cremate you since I'm still a good person. He flicked his fingers, and the flame flew out, precisely landing on the corpse. The corpse lit up. It burned furiously like a raging blaze. Since it was using the force as its fuel, the flame was burning furiously. Within a few seconds, the two corpses turned into ashes. Nothing was left behind. Without the corpses, no one would know what had happened here tonight. Even if someone managed to find him, they wouldn't be able to know what he took. It's time to go back. But why were these two people fighting here in the middle of the night? Was it for fun? Wang Teng was puzzled. He scanned the surroundings but found nothing. In the end, Wang Teng could only shake his head. It looked like he was thinking too much. Wang Teng decided to return to the party. After taking a step, he retracted his feet back. Wang Teng stared at the huge tree the fire element martial warrior was leaning against just now. He had a weird feeling. He walked under the tree and looked up. The leaves were blocking his view, so he couldn't see anything. He had no choice but to jump lightly. Wang Teng landed on a branch and looked around him casually. Huh! His gaze froze. It was a backpack. Wang Teng jumped over and took the backpack down from the branch. He unzipped the bag and found it stuffed with hay. The hay was wrapped around an egg. Were they fighting over this egg? Wang Teng touched his chin as he wondered to himself. The martial warriors were dead, so there was no point thinking about this. This egg belonged to him now. Wang Teng has left for half an hour. Why isn't he back yet? The rich second generations and children of officials were getting impatient from the long wait. They were a little unhappy. We didn't ask you to wait. If you want to leave, you can leave. Why are you complaining? Suji frowned and replied. That's not right. We are waiting because we are worried about Wang Teng. However, from Wang Teng's point of view, it isn't right of him to make so many people wait. If he can't find anything, he should have come back earlier. He doesn't need to put on a strong front, said Li Rongcheng. That's right. I think he just boasted himself as an advanced stage martial disciple. A young man scoffed. Some other people wanted to chime in, but a voice suddenly came out from the forest. I've never said that I'm an advanced stage martial disciple, right? In that case, there's no such thing as a self-proclaimed advanced stage martial disciple. The young man's expression froze. Wang Teng looked at him indifferently. Then, he smiled at the crowd. I'm sorry to keep you waiting for such a long time. I forgot that I'm bad with directions, so I accidentally lost my way. Everyone almost fainted. Where did you get the guts to enter a forest alone when you have no sense of direction? Investigation. What can you investigate? Young Master Li, be careful. You might become a gossip monger if you continue speaking behind other people's back. Wang Teng looked at Li Rongcheng and gave him a mysterious smile. Feeling guilty from his gaze, Li Rongcheng turned his head away. Zhou Baiun didn't believe Wang Teng's nonsense, though. She walked forward and asked, Young Master Wang, did you discover anything? No, I circled the vicinity a few times and finally managed to find my way back. I didn't see anything, Wang Teng shook his head and replied. Zhou Baiun looked at him intently with a meaningful gaze. She said, in that case, let's go back. It's getting late. No one had any objections. Everyone went back to the mountain villa to get their cars before bidding farewell and leaving. Of course, we needed to mention that the person who caught the most number of prey was Li Rongcheng. Since Wang Teng left the hunting ground earlier, Li Rongcheng had won by a small margin. He did receive a mysterious gift. It was something Zhou Baiun brought back from overseas, a human-sized doll. And it was a female. Li Rongcheng's expression was indescribable at that time. Wang Teng and Suji's car drove into Donghai City one after the other. At the intersection, while they were waiting for the light to turn green, Suji wound his window down and shouted at Wang Teng, Brother Wang Teng, we will be going home first. Please send little way back. Go ahead. Send a message when you reach home. Wang Teng waved his hand. The two of them parted ways at the intersection. Wang Teng dropped by way at her home. She lived in another villa district known as Jinhua. There were many wealthy people in Donghai City, so naturally, there were many similar villa districts. Bai Wei stood in front of the entrance of a villa and tiptoed as she waved. Brother Wang Teng, hurry up and go home. Be careful on your way back. I will take my leave now. Sleep early. You'll get old faster if you sleep too late. Wang Teng smiled and drove away. You are the one who will get old. Bai Wei pouted. Along the way, Wang Teng drove really fast. He just wanted to reach home as quickly as possible to count and examine the gains he had received tonight. He had hidden the backpack containing the mysterious egg, the fire element martial warrior's battle sword, and the other small items in his car trunk in advance. Earlier, Wang Teng had rushed back to the mountain villa at his fastest speed to hide the items. Then, he went back to find Zhou Baiun and others. If not, there was no way for him to explain the many items he was carrying. Fortunately, when he achieved his breakthrough, the wound created by the fire element martial warrior had healed. He wouldn't be able to explain it either if it didn't. Wang Teng took off his blood-stained and torn clothes and found a similar colored shirt to change into. The night was dark, so no one noticed that he had changed his clothes. Since he was in a rush, this was the best he could do. Some explanations couldn't withstand careful analysis. Jo Byun had probably noticed something amiss, but she didn't have evidence. She had to stop at her guess. Wang Teng recalled the things he did as he drove his car. After confirming that there was no huge problem, he finally felt a little more relieved. The egg. He felt like he was a thief. He shook his head. There were only a few cars on the road at night. Wang Teng placed his left elbow on the car window and leaned his head on his hand. He started driving with one hand like a seasoned driver. As Wang Teng drove past a business lane, he saw the bustling and prosperous street from the corner of his eyes. It was already past 10 p.m., but there were still many people on the streets. They were laughing and having fun. The young men held the hands of young ladies and stayed out the entire night. It felt so good. The life of an ordinary person is not bad too. As Wang Teng thought to himself, a familiar figure suddenly appeared in his vision. Part 2 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.